I've had so many comic book shop fights with people being like, "Oh, that dog's stupid. What else do you want? Do you want pink kryptonite? Do you want, do you want a bunch of
Isn't there a
robots in his
horse?
closet or whatever?
I like there was a horse too.
Yeah.
Yep, there's Comet the Stallion Supreme. Or pardon me, Comet the Super Horse. It's Sirius the Stallion Supreme.
Friend, I think you just did a slip up Supreme.
Yeah.
No, but and that, like,
Comet the Super Horse. Yeah.
And I do acknowledge that if we were talking about bringing back Beppo the Super Monkey, no, don't.
Everyone, and welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jmike Folson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show.
Yes, many happy returns indeed, because we're touching back on a property that I love so goddamn much, even if it's really showing its age in the rereads. We are delving back into the Alan Moore run of Supreme. We are looking at the second volume, the incomplete story, the Supreme the Return story that continued after his initial arc that ran for like the first year of the book. This picks up from there. It goes to the cancellation of Supreme when the Maximum Press label completely collapsed and relaunched, and this is why it's called The Return, when Awesome Comics launched and brought the book back, and it went for a few more issues and then completely fell apart and all of that. But to have a conversation about this incomplete epic, we are joined by Logan Crowley.
Hi, thank you so much for having me back. I can't wait. I love this comic.
Awesome. Thank you for just leading it off. So I've made no illusions about the fact that I am a huge fan of this run just in general, and a massive fan specifically actually of this back half of the run. I think that the story of the year is really fun, but the best standalone issues are contained in this era of the book, which I just freaking adore. So Logan, before we started the call, you mentioned that you actually were not familiar with the back half of, or rather with the first half of the story, beyond the fact that you had listened to our episode on Supreme, the story of the year, or AKA the Supreme story of the year. So in a thing that we like to do, Jmike, could you explain the story of Supreme from just a Cliff Notes version of the story of the year, and then a basic summation of what happens in this book?
Oh man, you want me to remember story of the year? It was a fever dream, Case. From what I remember, he started off in like the Valhalla of all the Supremes, where they go and they get rewritten or revised. Then I do remember that there was a whole showdown that went down when Dax took over his ex-girlfriend's body, and he rewrote her consciousness and took over her body, and had been planning this huge master plot for like 60 years. And then when Supreme came back, he put it all into motion and tried to take him out once and for all. That's what I remember from that book.
Yeah, that's a pretty tight. That's the big arc of the book. The thing that happens in between is that Supreme, because he's coming from a fresh revision, re-explores his history, and so issue by issue gives us a chronology going from the 40s to the 50s and forward in terms of flashbacks to periods of Supreme's history, which is basically like a lesson in terms of or a history lesson in terms of like comic book lore, at least up until the 90s. but yeah, you nailed the big arc, which is that from the get-go, Dax has taken over the body of Judy Jordan, which is the Lana Lang equivalent for Supreme, who is a Superman analog, with all the serial numbers filed off, and that's as far as you go on the character.
They're not even that filed. Like, you can run your finger on them.
Yeah, you can still, like, if you rub your finger over it, you can feel the impression of what the numbers were. Like, if you were Matt Murdock, you could definitely tell what it was. So, yes, Darius Dax, who is the Lex Luthor analog, had died of cancer, took over Judy Jordan by way of nanobots, and then abandoned her body to take over the equivalent of a Mazo, which they called Magno in the story, and then fused with their version of kryptonite called Supremium to fall backwards in time as the Supremium Man, giving the powers to first Suprema, Sally Crane, who Supreme's adopted sister. And then he fused with even more Supremium and fell backwards in time and turned into the meteor that gave young Ethan Crane the powers of the First Blade, thus creating a complete closed loop of time for the existence of this weird meteorite thing.
Fever dream. That was right.
Yeah. No, it's certainly like this is a series that loves like closed time loops, as we will discuss as in this volume. But yeah, so that's Supreme, the story of the year. Jmike, what then happens in Supreme: The Return?
Oh gosh! So it first starts off where they
don't need to do a play-by-play. We're going to do a play-by-play when we do it.
There he has more adventures with Cliff Notes, Mr. Mxyzptlk. And then they have an adventure, like, how would I describe this? With all the villains escape the non-Phantom Zone. That's kind of what that is. It's like a jailbreak episode. There is a fun episode with... It's a fun issue with his version of Crypto, where Crypto gets out and has a lot of fun at night, and then has, like, 3,000 puppies the next day. And they all go rampant. My favorite episode of this part. And then it kind of wraps up with his old friend Supremium. Was it Supremium Man, or what is, I forget his name?
Well, Darius Dax, but yeah.
But he comes back and has like this whole like confrontation that kind of like doesn't go anywhere. But like Billy, who's been in prison most of this arc, comes out and tries to like have like a one-on-one conversation, like, hey man, I've been there. It's gonna be okay. And then he fuses with Dax, and they fuse consciousnesses, and they go through time again.
Sorry, not that Darius. Sorry, Darius Dax is part of that story, but the Supremium Man that we're in question is a separate character, also called the Meteor Master.
Yeah. That's what it was.
I had a whiplash there for a second. I was like, was he Dax too? Did I miss that?
No, that would be wild if somehow, and like we'll talk about that more when we get to it. But then the book kind of cuts off, and that is sort of the unfortunate thing. There's a clear story they're building to, because they set up the inverse of the supremacy, which is like the Valhalla for Supremes. They have, I believe it's Daxor, the evil version of that, where all the Darius Daxes go and reside in. And so they set up that like, oh, there's an evil version of this place that we've had as our sort of like awesome place to go to, and like only Supremes in his world could be possibly taken to, like taken out of reality when it is revised and go into the space. Nope. There's actually an evil version of that. And clearly they were setting up a giant war between the two of those.
Right.
Now, here's the thing that gets kind of wild. The story does kind of have a conclusion, and it kind of has two conclusions. So first up, Eric Larson took over the book like 15 years later and took the script for the issue that fell after this one, or like the following script, which was finished but never drawn, and did that issue, and then went off and wrote his own continuation of the Supreme story as a Supreme book. So that book continued until it kind of just like petered out, because it was fine. Like, I like Eric Larson, I love Savage Dragon, but the Supreme run was trying to make a book that was very much of the 90s fit into this like late 2000s, early 2010s kind of paradigm, and do some interesting things, but it didn't have the magic of the Alan Moore run unto itself, and had lost some of its steam, and was just a weird kind of vibe. Like they brought back the Grim 80s Supreme basically, and he becomes the de facto Supreme in our timeline, like rewriting the rewrite that we had dealt with up until that point.
Rewriting the rewrite of the rewrite.
Yes.
Backlash to the backlash to the thing that's just begun, as Bo Burnham said.
There was that whole bit where he takes, was it Diana? I forget her name, to like the Supreme thing, and all the Dianas from come together, and they're all at the bar.
Yeah.
And so you have like Soul Sister and like a whole bunch of them are sitting at the bar, and there's like that one depressed Diana who's like,
traumatized 80s Diana Dane.
And I was like, wait, what is this?
It's Alan Moore making fun of Alan Moore.
Yeah. So, and then because that one was an unsatisfactory conclusion to the Supreme story for a lot of fans, myself included, there is actually a fan edit, which I believe has art by Chris Sprouse to wrap up the story of it all. I will put a link to that in the show notes when this goes up, which is also, it's very like quick, like wrap up to the whole Supreme story, but it's there to wrap it up in some kind of way, which is admirable because this was a series that was really loved. It's also a series that is very much like the beta test for what would go on to be Tom Strong. Logan, are you familiar with Tom Strong at all?
Yes, I read the first 2 volumes of Tom Strong, and I like this better because I'm a Superman fan, but I think Tom Strong is objectively a better version of what Alan Moore was trying to do. I think in this, Alan Moore is trying to do classic superhero comics and turn off his cynical knob. And while I love it, he just clearly can't do it. Like that cynicism pokes through at, a bunch of different edges, like the edgy, traumatized Diane Dane and some of the other stuff. Whereas in Tom Strong feels much more sincere throughout, just a pure version of what it is.
Yeah, I think that's a very well said sort of take on it. Like this is, of course, using a full on Superman archetype versus the like Doc Savage archetype that they kind of go with Tom Strong. So there's inherent differences there, and it's like he's using a Rob Liefeld character. Like that's like sort of the funny part about this all. There's like kind of a joke just in that this is such an optimistic book made out of the Rob Liefeld Superman knockoff that ran for 40 issues and no one really gave a damn about. And then Moore came on and turned it into the flagship of the Awesome Comics line for however long that actually ran.
No, it's Rob Liefeld's Supreme is what if Stone Cold Steve Austin was Superman, but with none of his charisma. Like it's a really bleak, I can't stand it.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons to it, but it was not a series. But part of the reason why I think there are pros to it is because I'm a gigantic Superman nut and love Superman analogs to the point that I have an ongoing YouTube series about Superman analogs. Like it's a series that has no solid direction. There's a lot of revamps that happen just within the first 40 issues before we get to the Supreme of Alan Moore. Like he becomes like a very like religious figure at one point. He is wielding the hammer of Thor for a while there.
Yeah,
like
I only recently found out Keith Giffen takes over writing halfway through.
Yeah.
I might circle back and try that at some point. I love Keith
I need to go find those issues because I've read some of that period, but I did not realize that Giffen was the writer for that chunk. And so I am really curious to like go through that era specifically. Because I've read this era to death. And then actually I should note also, outside of this being sort of like concluded in some ways in Tom Strong, like a lot of the ideas that they're setting up, like the big amassing of forces that happens in this book, like where Supreme like has a whole world of automatons and a whole world of super dogs, and he's got the supremacy and like this whole thing that's all played out in Tom Strong. But then Warren Ellis did a series called Supreme Blue Rose, which we will look at some point on the show. And that is taking a very weird cerebral take on the revisions cycle. It's like a noir story about like Diana Dane trying to figure out what's going on as the world has just been revised.
Okay. I saw that in a store once, but I haven't picked it up.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very Warren Ellis in very much his Transmetropolitan kind of style.
Ooh, maybe not. Then I occasionally like Warren Ellis, but there's a lot of his Transmetropolitan. Again, the cynicism.
Well, it's not the shock kind of cynicism that Transmet has.
Oh, okay.
But it has this sort of like the big heady ideas kind of space.
Oh, I can get behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's worth checking out.
Yeah. Wow, I would give it a shot.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm in a very weird place with this because I've had this trade since high school, and I love this trade. But Supreme is so hard to get that this is all I've ever. This and the Liefeld stuff is all I've ever read. I've read this a bunch, but I've never been able to track down the rest of it.
That is wild. And now, so the Supreme series was one of those series that I spent a good chunk of my time being like a collector for, like really getting into comics to collect those, like, and like going to different stores trying to find back issues, because I got into it after the first year had run. And so by that point, trying to find the first 12 issues was really difficult. And so it was the first big series like that for me, followed by Miracle Man, where I was like actively trying to like pick up all the issues and seeing what could be found at random stores. Yeah. And that was, probably given our age difference, like 15 years before you. So
yeah. Yeah, that they're definitely, by the time I came down the pipe, I did occasionally find Supreme in long boxes. There was no Miracle Man. Miracle Man, every ad for Miracle Man was on the backboard of a comic shop by the time I got to hunting.
Yeah. But the good news was, like, not too well at this point, fairly long ago, Marvel got the rights to it and was able to republish all the trade paperbacks.
Oh yeah, I've got all of them.
Which at least made the story accessible, and it's also available on Amazon. Formerly called Mixology, but that's a whole thing. Good. Let's talk about this book. Let's talk about this book. So I want to do an issue by issue on this one, and like we'll try to keep it quick on some of these. But I love all the weird stories that happen in here, and I feel it's a disservice to the book not to like at least address each of the cool ideas that happens in each issue. So Jmike, you alluded to this already. The first issue in the arc is where we get a Mr. Mxyzptlk analog in the form of Zaz, the Sprite Supreme, which I just adore. So we open this up with some fun details. We get the mirror villains we set up the Billy Friday like computer device being in the mirror or the Hell of Mirrors, because he's taken out of their apparently he's considered cruel and unusual punishment by the mirror villains, which I thought was a really great idea.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go.
I was reading that Billy Friday is apparently supposed to be Grant Morrison, and that that is part of their feud. Is that he is very insulted by Billy Friday as a depiction of him. But I feel like Billy Friday really serves as kind of all of the British invasion writers.
Yeah, I always took it as broader than a specific one, but it is well documented that Moore and Morrison have a bit of a feud, and more of it going M-O-R-E of it going in the direction of Moore M-O-O-R-E right, having a grudge against Morrison. Right. Rather than the other way around, just by virtue of Morrison ascribing the due honors to Morris or to Moore for the stellar work that he created in the medium of comics. Yeah. So that it's one that I find frustrating, because like I am a Mooreist, like I very much am into like I go Alan Moore first before Grant Morrison, but I do really appreciate Grant Morrison, and like I find it very frustrating where there is that grudge, because like, come on, like y'all are creating some of the best stuff in comics, like like and from a similar perspective.
Unfortunately, the bedrock of that disagreement, though, as I understand it, is how much body hair a person should have. Like more clearly is in favor of all of the body hair you could possibly amass in your entire life, and Grant Morrison is anti-eyebrows even. So like, I don't think they're ever going to find common ground.
No, of course not. But what I was going to say is that one thing they do in this issue, which I think is just an incredible story device, is they have the issue within the issue, that they have the physical comic book of Supreme. I think it's issue 53.
Yeah, it's issue 53. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have the actual comic book of Supreme 53 inside the book. And so you can see like panels of it. And at first it's just a clever device for them to sort of set up like, oh, hey, there's this like weird thing going on here that is breaking reality. And then we get a fight with Omni-Man, the Supreme, or the Superman analog within the world of Supreme, that Supreme is the artist on.
Did this remind you guys at all of the Science Dog issue of Invincible?
A little bit, yeah.
I felt like between that and the Omni-Man, old Bobby Kirkman may be owing some royalties. Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I always took Kirkman as a fan of a lot of the comic books that were coming out around this time.
Yeah.
I see allusions directly to many of those sources. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Omni-Man clearly has a design language that echoes Supreme, just in his basic look, with the white and red color scheme. Now, that said, Omni-Man as a name is not that hard to come to if you're looking just for like some sort of generic Superman knockoff name.
Goodish guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun. We get like a nice little like back and forth between two characters who are like on similar levels, and it's fun where it's like he's got these powers that you don't have, like omni exhalation. What the hell is omni exhalation?
I think that's a reference to the Treasury edition Captain Marvel versus Superman, because in that issue, the fight between them, there is a lot of that kind of thing brought up. With at one point Superman just shouts Captain Marvel into a hole in the ground and stuff like that, and I thought that was a riff on that. It seemed very similar.
Yeah, I could see that. That certainly would be in the purview of Moore to do. He loves doing those deep cut references, more to the point that I often didn't catch those when I was first reading this book. Like I knew that that's what he was doing, but it was like there were things where for example, the Shadow Supreme, I was not familiar with the negative Superman, so I just thought it was a Bizarro riff, and I didn't realize that it was like, yes, it is a Bizarro riff, but it's also a riff on this even older character who is a prototype for Bizarro.
Yeah, we
get the introduction of Carl Chambers in this, which is nice. It's basically the equivalent of like Ron Troop. I'm trying to be delicate in the way I'm saying this. It's because the cast up until this point has been very white, both here and with the character of Ron Troop in the Superman books. So it was a necessary introduction because the supporting cast in this book was ridiculously white, and that needed to be changed. So that is why the character was introduced as a additional editor on the book.
I am afraid that he was only added, and this is jumping forward a little bit, but
for the next issue.
I'm very afraid that he was only added for a very in poor taste joke in the next issue. That when I got to that next issue and saw what they did with him,
it's 2 issues from now. I just
yeah. But that one hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh, maybe there's a reason this isn't getting reprinted as fast as you would expect.
Yeah, there's a few spots like that, and it is wild where it's just like, oh yeah, what honestly I don't think was in malicious intent in a lot of spots, but it's just like, oh, time has marched on in terms of our cultural sensitivities of things. But yeah, then we get the introduction of Saz, the Sprite Supreme, and that is a fun character. Like, it's very much a Batmite style character, and it indicates that there's like a Batmite equivalent for all the superheroes. But he does a bunch of like cool visual things. They do like a fun effect of flipping the city skyline, and they like turn all the clouds into sponges. But ultimately, the way they defeat him, I think, is so cool, which is that they just read the comic book.
Yeah. Skip to the end.
Yeah, they turn to the end of the book and they figure out, and this is a fun detail, which is that what had already been established, which is that Saz, the Sprite Supreme, can only exist in a prime number dimension. They realize, like, wait, but technically we're in the 4th dimension, which is not a prime number. And they point that out to him, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I guess I can't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's a fantastic Mexelplick style story, and the way that they get rid of him is awesome. The best versions of Alan Moore's stuff. Like, it's meta in a way that just absolutely works.
Yeah, and then the last thing about this issue that I want to point out is that it is setting up the bigger world that is going on in the Supreme Universe. So it's setting up the Judgment Day arc that was going on as a limited series that was the full retooling and establishing of everything that had been Rob Liefeld's Extreme universe into this new Awesome Comics universe. Awesome Comics being the publisher for the books at the time, which was the Rob Liefeld like rebranding of his line, but with Alan Moore getting to call all the shots.
Mm-hmm.
And so they talk about how there are advertisements, and you can see the advertisement on the back of the issue when it's like, for Judgment Day, which was the actual advertisement on the back of the issue if you had the physical copy.
Funny. They think they're so funny.
Who is that character? I don't know if he's a Batman analog but the
Die Hard.
Is that who that is in the blue and the white at the end? Yeah.
So he's trying to think of the best description for him. He's an android that has been fighting since World War II. And has had upgrades over the years. So he has some kind of Captain America details because he sometimes rocks a shield, but he would be more like the Human Torch if he just continued being a superhero for forever. Yeah. As opposed to getting rebooted into being Johnny Storm.
So this is
by the Human Torch, I mean the android Human Torch, the original. Yeah.
So this is another example of Rob Liefeld failing at stop making Captain America ripoffs or draw 25 in Uno and just dying in a pile of cards.
Yeah. Like I don't want to like say that he's too much. Like he is part of the group that they established are like the Allies, which is like their Justice League equivalent, alongside Super Patriot. So he's not strictly speaking their Captain America. Like I said, he actually doesn't have a direct analog situation. I'm just trying to say like, oh, he's the most like these following characters, but like the android part is like kind of important too.
Hey, you know what though? Good for Liefeld. If he's at least ripping off a couple characters at the same time, that's progress. That's a lot better than Agent America or any of the other stuff he was doing at the same time.
That is true. This is in the era where he got the Fighting American rights, as we will discuss as we continue reading through this all. But moving on to the next story, this is the story of Judy Jordan, which I remember and having here. So before we move on to the Judy Jordan, let's back up for a second because I don't want to rush anyone's thoughts. But before we move on to the next issue, any thoughts about this one that either of you guys have that we haven't covered?
No, I don't have much for this. I mean, this is pretty much a straight over the plate Mixelplick story, and I like it, but I definitely don't have as much to say about it as I do the others.
I mean, it's a cool story. I do like the fact that like, oh, if we just read the comic, it'll tell us how this all ends. Haha, wink, wink, nod, nod to the camera. I think that's a cool little stranger than fiction type thing. But it was just like Logan said, it's very straightforward.
Cool. Yeah. So moving on to the next issue, this is our Judy Jordan story. And I think that the Ballad of Judy Jordan is a really fun 3-part story, with the first part being this like whole flashback sort of establishing the history, just so, in case you don't remember what the previous issues, because the story of Judy Jordan up until that point had been spread out over the course of the 12 issues of Supreme, the Story of the Year. So this was a good chance to sort of like condense it all for anyone and just like catch anyone up in terms of like what happened and where we're at with this. And I think it's kind of fun. We get a very, very, very 1-to-1 Judy Jordan in a Suprematon robot body who puts on a costume that is like just exactly what like Lana Lang wore when she was a super being.
Yeah. When she climbed in the well. Yeah. I definitely, I picked up on that. And you basically get one of the superpowered Lana and superpowered Lois cat fights in this issue. Yeah. I will say that I did not remember how many panty shots there were in that fight.
that fight. Here's what's wild. If you look at the trade, they are showing the art. So in the actual issue when it was published, it was a different art for the main issue that was here, and then this was backup art. So they had 2 artists go through this same chapter, and when they did the reprint, they took the artist from the second artist, like that art, as opposed to what they had rolled with the original. And I have no idea why.
Really?
Aside from I did prefer this art, the panning shots and stuff, because I was a teenager.
Fair. Yeah.
Yeah, because it also had sort of like this sort of a weirder style to it, similar to like what is in the first chapter, and I forget who it was. But
I can look that up.
So I was like, there is an obsessive amount at certain points. So like, who?
It's very cheesecake.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I get like the demographic is,
Yeah, no, Judy Jordan has some very cheesecake proportions in this all. And likewise, like Suprema is also drawn to be attractive on the eyes.
There's no way this is right. This trade that I have is saying that issue was drawn by Rick Veitch. And I know the flashbacks are, but there's no way that that's who's drawing that fight scene.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, there were two artists who did that chunk. And that might have been Veitch who did the original version, and then they swapped it out for the sort of backup artist. It's really weird. It's just a detail I know because I happen to like have had the issue like at the time, and it was a weird thing that they did where basically and it might have been to fill out page counts, but it was just there were 3 chapters, and then at the end of the 3 chapters there was a 4th chapter, which was just chapter 2, but by this artist.
Well, now I got to track down the issue and see which one I like better. Good luck, I guess.
But it's fun having this like little cat fight between 2 super powered beings. It's hard with a character like Supreme and with like Suprema to like have like really engaging fights. And Moore does a really good job of coming up with circumstances for them to be real fights. Like from the Omni-Man battle to this one with the Suprematon body to future ones, like they set the stakes of like good confrontations very well. But yeah, so then we get the final chapter with which is Return to Chris Sprouse on the art. Yeah, we sort of are reminded that Supreme is not the most empathetic character, and it's very similar to what happens with Tom Strong. Like the character is just not a very empathetic individual. He's just like kind of cold and a little distant because he's so like impressively powerful and good natured, but not necessarily like emotion smart.
No, but and he's very, very much like the Silver and Bronze Age Superman in that way. It's one of the reasons why and I love those Superman comics, don't get me wrong, but as a Triangle era defender, I think that people who remember that version of Superman being very empathetic and outgoing have not revisited a lot of that material other than Elliot S. Maggin in a long time. Because it's very much like this. That Superman is kind of a oafish knucklehead a lot of the times when it comes to emotional stuff.
Yeah, this is the same kind of Superman that put Kara Zor-El in an orphanage rather than like setting her up with any kind of like actual family.
Yeah. Or knocked out Martian Manhunter because he didn't want to take the time, because he wanted to get back to work and he didn't want to take the time to listen to Martian Manhunter explaining to him why the War World Key was locked up. So he just cold cocks him so he can get on with his day.
But yeah, so we established that this is a existential nightmare for Judy Jordan, like her mind having been recovered. And I don't think we actually like said that out loud. So Judy Jordan, her mind inside the body that had been taken over by Darius Dax, they were able to recover her mind. And because her body had aged at that point, like 30 years from the point where she had last actually had any memories, rather than put her in this like elderly woman's body, they put her in a robot body. Right. That's the story of this issue. But this is a nightmare for her because now she has no point of connection. She is like 100% never going to be with Supreme, the man of her dreams, like the person that she's always loved. And she can't even have a normal life now. And what is the future for her like? And the answer to that is S1, the ultimate Suprematon, the Suprematon who has a mind copy of Supreme, who in the first volume was acting out a life of being Supreme. And actually the fun part there is that's the explanation for characters having crossovers with Supreme prior to the Alan Moore takeover, where the character comes back from being in outer space. Those adventures were ones with the Suprematon, who was acting out the role of Supreme in that period.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
I love when he renames himself in this. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but when he takes when he takes the name Talos, I thought that was great and a much better name for a robot servant of a Superman analog than Gary.
But it is a name. It is a name. And this is also like the straight up like Tom Strong sequence of him giving a hyper saucer to someone like, for example, the Modular Man or Tom Strange, this is exactly the type of sequence that we would see in Tom Strong just a few years later. Now, what I do adore is that they have the whole convention that Ethan Crane supposedly knows Supreme and is able to just sort of recount to everyone the tales of like what happened with the superhero. And it's just so goddamn fun that they just like lean on the fourth wall of being like, yep, like just like back in the Silver Age, he happens to be friends and no one questions it. They're just fine with that.
Yeah. Well, and even more egregiously in the Byrne stuff, when they reveal that to Lois that actually Ma and Pa Kent raised Superman and Clark Kent. and she still doesn't figure it out. She doesn't take that last step.
Well, anyway, so the Suprematons set up their own like little world that they can populate with their own robot children, and it's kind of a cool thing. This is a theme that Alan Moore really likes to do, where he takes a thing from the Silver Age and is like, "Would you like to set up your own like colony world out there in space?" Yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, with this and the radar stuff later, I would love for somebody to actually come back to this comic universe, but like, I don't know, almost in like a 2099 or a Batman Beyond level, and just see like what's happening in this universe now that it has a planet of Superman robots and a planet of cryptos, super intelligent cryptos, and just
with
like
hands, with robot hands,
just like what does that do? What does that do to society to have that around? I think that would be a really cool comic if somebody wanted to do a follow up to this.
Yeah.
Oh, what if they
would be a fun one?
Sorry.
Well, the dogs would clearly mop the floor with them. The Suprematons are very tough, but not quite a supreme being.
Yeah,
level of
but
tough.
they can manufacture infinite.
Yeah,
like,
it'd
be great.
The politics of space. I would prefer to think that they wouldn't go to war just because they're both like enlightened beings that are able to create post-scarcity worlds. But it could be fascinating to have a war.
Yeah,
it would certainly be fun. But yeah, so this is the first establishment of one of these like world of super beings that Moore just loves creating. Before we move on to the next issue, is there any notes that you guys have about this one?
Just that I really feel like this, in a lot of ways, this is the best ending to Lana Lang that character has ever gotten. I think it's really beautiful. I think it's kind of like a slightly more grounded takeoff of the Superman Red, Superman Blue thing, except that I really think they sell at the end that she's not really settling for Talos. That she kind of realizes when Supreme puts her in this robot body, the flaws that he has as a person, his kind of inherent inhumanity, and realizes that Talos S1 gets it,
Yeah, he in his own way, S1 is more human than Supreme.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like he certainly is more emotional intelligence than Supreme does. Jmike, did you have anything you wanted to say about this issue?
I was just laughing about you mentioned the whole good ending for Lana Lang, and I was like, wow, she really hasn't had any good endings, has she?
No. I mean, well, she's ended up with Pete Ross, and she's ended up happy at times, but it never feels like it's quite as happy as she should be. If her OTP. Well, no, actually, I take it back. Superman, Batman Generations. She ends up as an immortal being living with Superman in the far future. So there. Although that gets weird with like the whole grooming thing that happens in the later volumes, which, we don't need to talk about. What we do need to talk about is before we move on to the next issue, the trade has a page separating these, which is some Alex Ross art, and I don't like it.
With Old Man Supreme,
the Old Man Supreme stuff, and I find it so frustrating because Alex Ross did a bunch of actual Supreme like artwork. He did or at least a poster or two, but there's like one distinct one, which is like the supremacy shot. And it's like all the characters from the Supreme universe, including Saz for some reason, but it has like all the full supremacy, like all the various versions of Supreme. And it's this like wonderful, huge, like super tall vertical poster, which I just wish that they had used as the cover for one of these two trades, and they don't. They use this weird concept art that he did that they never used. They never printed anything with this character like design, except for these two trades where they just like include it as like the cover stuff because like they have Alex Ross artwork to use as covers, which I realize it makes sense. Like Alex Ross is like a very good thing to put on the cover of a book because it like helps sell, but this costume just was never used. And it's the costume that the only place it ever actually was used was in goddamn Kingdom Come with Brainiac's daughter.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's my problem with it. This costume is way too Superman to Kingdom Come.
Right.
And I know that with the character like Supreme, you're really splitting hairs in what is and isn't too much Superman. But I do actually, I wish the only part of this that I want to keep is the belt portion, which I know is only on there because Alex Ross loves to blow everybody's logo up too big for the frame.
Yes, and that I was about to say, like once you see that, you can't help but unsee it. Alex Ross just loves having giant versions of the logo. And in this case, it's just the Superman S.
But Supreme's costume is one of my beefs with it. I'll tell you, actually, this is a good place to put this in. My biggest beef with Supreme as a character is that I am a 90s kid. And my first definition of the word Supreme was not very excellent, awesome word for cool guys. It was, do I want sour cream at Taco Bell? That was the first time in my life that I heard the word Supreme or had to register what it meant. And is that a problem in and of itself? No. Is that a problem with a character that is so white? Just white suit, white hair. He couldn't look more like sour cream. And it definitely gets in my way with this character's design and name all the time. But I actually like the Talos costume that he takes when he flies away. Yeah. I think that's a better Supreme costume.
You know what's funny is that clearly the character Apollo from The Authority was designed with Supreme in mind. He and Midnighter very much look like Supreme and Professor Knight, pardon me, the Batman analog from the series. And it's obvious, like Apollo especially, because like the design is like so close. And the Talos design is actually closer to Apollo slightly because it's got the circle inside the sort of V shape that, you know, is the chest part of the Supreme design. And I always just found that like kind of fun where like there's just little bits of design things that just sort of blend together.
I think the little touches that they do to change, Apollo tends to have the little bit of yellow, like the kind of half belt. He doesn't have the cape. He's got the longer hair. Like they definitely are very similar though. I can see what you're saying there. I've never made that connection before.
But why don't we move on to the next issue, because we get a costume revision, at least up front, and then we find out more things are different. But that costume revision is that Supreme's costume all of a sudden has the stars and bars on them.
Yeah, that wasn't really what I was. This is a real monkey's paw wish of I'm like, Supreme's costume's really blank. I wish they'd add something that really stands out to it. And no, that's not what I meant.
Right. You know, this is the thing that kind of sucks. Just in like, all right, I've said this, and this is like such a dangerous thing to say. Objectively, I think that the stars and bars is like a good looking flag. Like I think it is abhorrent, like social, like it represents everything bad, but I think it like looks cool.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. And like I think that this costume actually like looks pretty cool, but it again, it's abhorrent. It's awful.
I have, this is a good place to, because I have to say this at some point with this issue. I have such mixed feelings about this issue. Because as I'm from Georgia, right? I'm raised in an area that is very like statues of Confederate generals until very recently. All throughout my Civil War monuments everywhere. I can't tell you how many Civil War reenactments I was taken to as a kid, both by my family and through the school. So this is tapping into something that I have a lot of mixed, uncomfortable feelings with, right? And on top of that, I am in general, you know, this is something I don't touch on purpose. I try not to, because I think of it as a real black eye in my culture specifically. That that it was something that was so foundational. And as a rule, I do have a real pet peeve with Southerners only ever showing up to be depicted as goons and villains.
Yeah.
And having said that, this is such a great premise for an issue that I basically spent this whole issue getting won over and pissed off from page to page. Like I'd get to one and I'd be like, oh, this is great. This is brilliant. Alan, you're back. And then I'd get to Rowboy and I'd be like, oh, no.
Yeah. So what happens in this issue is that what has been established already, which is the League of Infinity, which is clearly a beta test for the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah. And we'll talk about that when we get to the little like one shot that they have later in this book. But the League of Infinity, which is the Legion of Superheroes analog for Supreme, has ready access to time traveling. And one character in the League of Infinity, Wild Bill Hickok, a real historical figure, is set up to steal the plans for the atomic bomb from the future and gives them to the Confederacy so that the South wins the Civil War.
So the girl will like him.
Yeah, so a girl will like him. And that's where the story picks up. Like Supreme wakes up one day and he remembers everything because he's gone through revisions already. So his memory doesn't get wiped. He's confused by the whole situation. So even though his costume changed, his mind doesn't. Right. And so he wakes up one day and just all of a sudden the world is just like, I was about to say more racist, but it's not really more racist. It's like just more overtly racist.
Say somebody pulled off the gossamer. But sorry, go ahead.
So before we go further into this one, Jmike, Logan and I are very, very white. Oh, and
speaking of with sour cream.
Yeah, so I don't want to overstep anything on this one. So just by all means.
I feel like
how are you feeling about this issue?
I feel like you set me up because you were like, I can't wait to see what you think about one of these issues. And I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, this is what he meant.
I don't think I said it as I can't wait. I was like, I was setting you up that I was curious how you're going to respond to one of these issues.
He could have meant the one with the dogs. You seem like a guy who likes dogs. Could have been anything.
Because I was like, because you come from like, oh, well, Talos and Judy have like this whole like, oh, okay, happy ending thing. And all of a sudden, like the next thing is stars and bars. And I was like, word? And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's a fun concept. I would tell you that because I understand what they were trying to do. I was like, you just chose like the weirdest way of telling this story.
I really don't think that this story could have been told by an American. Like I don't think an American would have felt that they could tell the story full stop. Like even the most culturally sensitive one.
I don't know that you should tell it. I'm like I said, I keep going back and forth. Well, for one thing, Wild Bill Hickok fought for the Union. Yeah, yes. There is something really gross to me about pulling a real guy out and being like, actually, even though he fought on the right side of this war, despite being from a border state, so he kind of got to pick. So he fought for the Union, but then he's going to go back in time because he's got a crush. It's something that's very weird to me about the fact that he was a real dude with like emotions and values and
which is weird about that character in this story, in this iteration of the story, because like I forget the other heroine's name, where she was like, yeah, we're just like, it's not really him, it's like iterations of him through time that help us fight things. So I was like, wait a second. So he's been dead this entire time.
Well, but he has been dead this entire time. Like he's a character from the 19th century. Like he,
well, yeah, well, like they're like kind of like echoes of him, basically.
Well, no, it's just that versions of him from different points in his life are still going to be active participants in the League of Infinity. But like at some point in his history, he dies, and this happens to be like
that part too. Because they were like, yeah, he dies with his back turned to the doors in the saloon. That's something he never did. And they're like, well, how does that happen? And they're like, oh, we get it now. We're the ones that kill him.
Here's the other thing that's wild. Wild Bill Hickok's death is actually an infamous thing. Mm-hmm. Like the whole him being shot with his back to the door while he's holding aces and eights as his poker hand. Yeah. Exactly. Like that's an infamous part of like poker lore. So like the fact that Wild Bill Hickok has been a member of this team of superheroes from characters pulled from throughout time, it's always been like a sword of Damocles that he was going to die at some point, infamously. And so the fact that they incorporate that into a story is fascinating to me, because this is how I discovered the character. Like I didn't know who he was until I read this issue, because I was a dumb teenager. And then I found out, like, oh no shit, this was actually a real story.
Oh man. See, the way my dad is, I had these Wild Bill Hickok, Wyatt Earp, Blackjack Ketchum, Billy the Kid, Bass Reeves. Like, these were guys that were around me as much as the superheroes were. Like, I was very much plugged into these characters. That's just my dad's thing, like from the jump. I don't know though. The question of like an American probably wouldn't have pulled this off. I don't know. I think maybe in this instance the American's right. I think there's some... I didn't say pull off. I didn't. I just I got you. Would have written the story. Oh yeah, no, I don't. I think it's one of those things where I don't. I think that might be my disconnect with this. Is I think that this is somebody from across the pond writing about something very delicate, very indelicately, and there's something weird just as much as when we do it. Like when we write about another country and turn all the Europeans into mustache twirling, Bond villains. I think that there's some of that going back the other way. Although that very well may just be the fact that I'm from Georgia, like, and have, this is an especially soft, tender spot for me, I think.
No, I think you're right to say that it's not handled very delicately. Yeah. So like for the readers, if they haven't actually read this issue, everything gets turned into as if it's like plantation era South, even though like he's supposed to be in sort of like a New York analog or Newark analog, if we're going off of the DC lore of Metropolis being in Delaware.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
that still doesn't make sense to me, but anyway.
No, it actually makes perfect sense. It's if Delaware Delaware is like a tax haven because it is super low tax rates on just about everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these businesses that have headquarters in Wilmington and Newark, Delaware, which are like the northern cities of the state. And the hypothesis that I have is that Metropolis is as if they actually were forced to have like actual businesses there and not just like an office.
Mm.
I still like every time I see Metropolis, I automatically think New York.
Well, yeah. And Omegapolis is like that here. But here it's been turned into like plantation era Southern scenario with like the main superhero being the Klansman, which actually is a weird detail because the Klan wouldn't exist if the South had won.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. Why would they be? That's
they also mentioned that there's a villain called the Carpetbagger, which is like, of course, like just fun history references, but like also wouldn't exist if the South had won.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah. Sidebar on the last thing. At some point, one of us should do an episode on where we think DC cities are, since James Gunn is apparently going to start giving us answers. Because I have very strong opinions about Gotham being in South Carolina. Just putting that out in the ether before it leaves my head.
Well, Metropolis being in Delaware was an already established thing for DC lore.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was a thing. Like in those like those like guides to like the geography of DC that they've put out over the years. Like Delaware has been where Metropolis has been located, and I believe they put New Jersey as the location for Gotham.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Well, unfortunately, they have a New Jersey there. Like. You could put it in South Carolina and it'd be new. We'll do that. That's another episode.
Anyway, yeah, that's a tangent. Anyway, so Supreme having woken up to this whole situation, I'm really glossing over some of the references they make in here because, as we established, like it's not delicate, and I'm not the person to really like weigh in too much on some of this stuff. But he goes to the tower of the League of Infinity, and it's all broken up, and that I think is like a very cool representation of their time traveling and how it's affected by the effect of Wild Bill Hickok. So it's established that Wild Bill, who in the original timeline didn't die by playing poker, eventually went nuts because of a crush and basically tried to have a midlife crisis where he tried to like win this girl's heart by winning the Civil War for the South by way of stealing the plans for the atomic bomb and bringing them to the Confederacy. I think it's clever how they establish how it works, like through like a telegraph line and like through like it's like brought in by a wagon. I think like those are like cool details there. And the artwork for this issue is great. It's like Chris Sprouse like definitely doing like a great job on everything. And the League of Infinity, it's nice having the different opinions of characters from different timelines, like Witch Winch saying like, no, we should side note, Witch Winch.
Yeah.
But Witch Winch saying like, we just got to kill the motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Everyone's kind of like staring at her.
And everyone agrees except for Supreme and Future Woman.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do, though. I don't call me call me a triangle era guy, but sometimes you got to kill a motherfucker. Like, and in the situation where somebody is nuking Washington, D.C. on behalf of the Klan, that's a kill a motherfucker o'clock occasion.
Certainly. So they go back in time and they do this like pageantry where Future Woman like is distracts Wild Bill and then Achilles shoots him, and then they come back and timelines have been restored and everything is good. And the issue ends with the mirror villains finding what in the televillains words is something that looks very much like a television.
It's Billy Friday's laptop, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the next issue is the last issue of the original run of Supreme. This is the escape of the mirror villains. So the televillain, who is a character who's established, is able to go inside TV signals to the point where he can go into actual shows and interact with the characters of a TV show, even out like not like the actors filming it. Like they establish like he can go and alter the content of a TV show by way of traveling into it. You know, pure Silver Age, like kind of supervillain kind of concept.
I loved about these bad guys that they were so Silver Age without being there aren't really any but one character that you can be like, this is a pastiche of them. But they are so Silver Age DC in their gimmicks and their motivations and everything. I thought this is maybe my favorite of the character adaptations that Moore does in the whole thing, because you're getting the vibe of the nostalgia that he's going for, but you're getting something really new with them too.
Yeah, like they're all very cool, and like we said, aside from the Shadow Supreme being like a direct nod to the Negative Superman, they all are clever characters without necessarily being like one-to-one knockoffs of anything.
I mean, you could make arguments like Optilux is probably Brainiac.
Well, Optilux is definitely Brainiac.
Yeah, because but even then, his motivations are so different from. He's got this very like cult leadery, more than gathering information. He is this very like cult leadery attention economy kind of thing going on with why he's taking people. And then Korgo's probably Mongol. That one's pretty close.
Yeah,
but he really could be any of the Space Tyrant villains. You know, it could just as easily be the guys from the Muhammad Ali crossover or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, we do get a little bit of the continuity that's being set up here, which is Sentinel, which is a character who was a member of Youngblood, but was revealed to be a traitor in the Judgment Day miniseries that we talked about earlier. He breaks out of the jail here when the Youngblood book that spun out of Judgment Day launches. He is a villain that encounters them, I believe, in issue 2. So just as like, again, there's a lot of continuity being established between the Supreme book and like everything else that Moore was doing in the Awesome universe at the time. But then all the villains just like run rampant. They destroy all the Suprematons. They go nuts on that. And then the the televillain kills Monica and Rachel from Friends.
Yeah, which that is that dated? Yes. Did I cackle? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, talk about like a specific pop culture reference right there. But yeah, this is what I mean when I say that the televillain is able to go into shows and affect it, because Courtney Cox like confirms that she's not actually affected by it, even though like in the episode that was airing, like she gets murdered on TV.
Yeah. Oh, it's very, very, very Silver Age DC, Otto Bender, Gardner Fox. Don't think about it too hard, dork kind of superpower function. Like,
yeah. We get a quick flash of Professor Knight and Twilight's new outfit that will be featured a bunch more in the aforementioned Youngblood book that spun out of Judgment Day.
Okay, so that's who that is.
Yeah,
I had
so
no idea
she's
who that is.
Yeah,
she's the Robin analog.
Okay.
And Professor Knight is the Batman analog. But yeah, so the villains all break out. We get some very cool shots of the negative, or I was about to say the negative Superman, the Shadow Supreme, looking just menacing as hell, especially when he like confronts Suprema and then gets into a fight directly with Supreme. Again, setting up really good stakes for fights with Supreme. Like the characters consistently are, you know, like the actual confrontations that are being put out there, they're on the scale that Supreme actually is challenged, which is impressive considering that he's so powerful.
Well, and you have, you know, if there's one thing that Alan Moore does maybe better than any author ever, is one-page horrifying villain mic drops. And when Suprema comes around the corner and Shadow Supreme is, I think he says, "Hello there. I killed your dog, by the way." Like, that is such an Alan Moore moment.
Yes. With just wonderful art by Chris Sprouse. Like, just got to shout out that.
Chris Sprouse and Rick Veitch, I think, are, and not to take anything away from Moore, I love the stories in this, but I think they're the real MVPs of this series. Like, their work on this is so gorgeous.
For real. And it becomes such a shame when, because of, I've heard that the Rob Liefeld did not treat his artist very well, which is not to be surprised from what we've heard about Rob Liefeld. And so it makes sense that Sprouse does not finish the tenure of the book, but it's a shame because his art was so good.
Oh yeah, and perfect for the series.
Yeah. And Rick Veitch doing the flashbacks is also just so good.
Chris Sprouse has such a Al Plastino, Wayne Boring look, Superman look to all of his work, really, but especially in this, that just really, like, it perfectly captures that vibe while also kind of elevating the material. You know, it doesn't look old, but it looks classic.
Yeah, and like his body work is it's exaggerated, but it's not so exaggerated the way that like a lot of like 90s comics like made the superheroes look. Yeah. Like there's like a realism to the anatomy that is kind of Dave Gibbons-esque. Yes.
Yeah, I can see that.
But so we get a flashback with Rick, that Rick Veitch does that shows the origins of the Hell of Mirrors, which is a setup to be actually like literally the mirror from like Alice in the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a funny detail. So, but then we cut back to Supreme fighting with Shadow Supreme, and Suprema goes to like round up the other villains, and that's where we get the cliffhanger for this one, which is the reveal of Optimus.
Great design on that villain. I love his look too.
Oh yeah, like I mean, so like I said, he is very one-to-one with Brainiac, and yes, he's got differences to him, but like he and rather than miniaturizing everyone, he turns them into sentient bits of light in a prism world, and it's just such a cool design. Like the mirrors floating around him, like he looks like Brainiac, but like only if you squint, you know?
Yeah, I don't think you would know. I think he looks like Brainiac to the degree that I don't think most people would know unless somebody said it first, and then it kind of like clicks.
Right. But then the next issue picks up, and the next issue is actually the first issue of Supreme: The Return, the relaunch of the series that would happen. And this is where it gets kind of weird because it opens with President Bill Clinton.
Yeah, this blew me away. Let me say, this is actually the first issue of Supreme I ever read. I got this issue out of a 3 for $1 box at my local comic shop, and just picked it up because it looked like Superman. And that led to me. That's the reason I bought the trade. And this is my favorite issue in the whole thing. I mean, I think it's a blast. And yes,
I think it's a lot of energy, and it's a beautiful issue.
Yeah, and it has some great character moments. And unfortunately, there was an evil tree in the Garden of Eden, and there's a weird running joke with the Clintons in this otherwise great comic. Like, such is life.
Yeah, there certainly the reputation that was going on for Hillary Clinton at the time pervades the actual content of the book.
Yeah, and look, she's currently very much cheering on the Israel stuff, so I'm not in any way defending Hillary Clinton's honor here, but it's sort of the same thing as the Hickok thing of like, hey man, these are real people. Maybe, maybe this could have been Hill and Billary, It didn't have to literally be them.
Yeah, no, it's literally Bill Clinton gets beaten up. I love that, like, Corgo, who initially was the space bully in the 60s before he became the space tyrant, that he like needles Bill Clinton to eventually like punch him and engage with him in like a official duel so that he can become the president of the United States.
Yeah. And let it be shown on the record, I'm not going to cry.
But then it cuts back to the Shadow Supreme fight, and that is a really cool fight with like some great action sequences that, could have very well been like an Omni-Man Invincible level fight. Mm-hmm. There's certainly a shot where they like fly right past a train where you're like, oh, that could have gone poorly.
Oh, yeah. I love the panel where he sticks Shadow Supreme in the center of the Earth's gravity.
Oh, yeah.
That is so well drawn and cool.
Yeah. And this issue, I want to like call out like the inking, or not just the inking, the coloring that's going on here. Like Shadow Supreme is such a cool effect. Like the gradient where like when he bleeds ultimately, where like red comes off of him eventually, but like close to his body is like this like seeping darkness affixed to it. Very cool work that they're doing with the character.
Yeah, absolutely.
We get the Slaver Ant, who is a fun villain concept. This like ant-themed villain who abducts babies and tries to convince them to
make a nest for her.
Yeah. And she has this like mind control like secretion that she puts on the parents so that they like fight each other rather than trying to fight her. They think they're attacking the Slaver Ant, but they're actually attacking each other.
Doesn't Eric Larson go on to do like a lot more with this character?
I'm not sure if this character specifically shows up in anything Savage Dragon, but it certainly looks like characters that show up in Savage Dragon. I just can't remember for sure if it's the same one.
Savage Dragon is such a blind spot for me because I'm always like, God, I need to read Savage Dragon, but there's so much. It's like
it's such a huge world too. Like there's so many characters. Like that's why I'm like, I can't say for sure that he didn't, but I don't think he used this character, but like it's definitely like characters that are in Savage Dragon, but I can't say for sure that he didn't because there is some back and forth. Savage Dragon is used in like Judgment Day, for example. Anyway, so we cut back to the duel with Suprema and Optilix, and it's kind of a fun way of defeating her by sending him back to Amalith, the Prism world. And at this point, they round up the televillain who gets beaten up by a crowd because he's the one who killed Monica and Rachel on Friends.
I love it.
And then we get the return of the Shadow Supreme and also the reveal that Radar did not, in fact, die. The Shadow Supreme had lied about it using a Suprematon dog robot, which I have one question, which is that there was clearly blood in the shot.
Okay, I wasn't on the first. Okay.
They cover that actually in Autobender Superboy. They have to have blood and human fluids in them. In case somebody injures one, it has to be a perfect double for Superman. I cannot remember what issue, but there's an issue where a Suprematon is in an accident. So people think that teenage Clark Kent, not a Suprematon, a Superboy robot is in an accident. Yeah. So people think that teenage Clark Kent has died. And Superboy is like tearfully getting ready to go live in outer space because he doesn't have his secret identity anymore. And I can't remember for the life of me how they get out of it, but like I think Alan Moore is pulling directly on like Silver Age Superman constantly overdoing it with that. You know?
I mean, it certainly makes sense in that regard. But here, I want to call out Radar the Hound Supreme is really fucking cool.
This is my favorite moment in the whole thing. Right?
This is so goddamn cool. This predates them treating Crypto really as a dog because Crypto always had super intelligence, and so they had weird rules for him. Like sometimes they would treat him as a dog in some regards, but he was always super intelligent. And so he never was like very vicious because he is part of the Superman canon. And it was part of the world of like comics code and all that stuff. Like he never had the instincts of a dog until after this. And I think that this is such a important rendition of a super dog that this is actually like mind fucking the guys over at iFanboy who constantly talk about how they thought Crypto was a Dalmatian. It's only goddamn Radar the Hound Supreme.
Yeah. Yeah. You know something too? You know what? The only other moment of Crypto really being like that before this, also written by Alan Moore, because there are real shades of the death of the Kryptonite Man and whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic call.
I think that one of the weirdest accolades you can definitely lay on Alan Moore's feet is best crypto writer between Radar and this. I don't think it's one he would expect to get, but my two favorite, and I count this as a crypto story pretty much, but this is my two favorite crypto moments really are, and I think this is even better because I don't want crypto to die. You know, I do think that other scene is awesome, but I want to read the line verbatim. It's my favorite moment in this whole thing.
Yeah, please.
He says, I know you. I know your smell. You depend upon your knowledge that the master would never kill you. He is too civilized. He is too humane. But I am a dog. And then he bites his arm off.
Right.
It's perfect.
And then chases him to Washington so that they can round up the criminals there as well. It is such a perfect moment with that. Like, it's again, I'm calling out the art. This is where like we get the Shadow Supreme like really bleeding and the darkness coming off of him.
Yeah,
which is such a cool effect there. But the drawing of Radar is fucking terrifying. He's a scary super dog.
I had an idea. I'm gonna put this out in the ether, and somebody's gonna steal it from me. But I'm not doing anything with it. So still don't. But but like I had an idea for a comic a few years ago where it's a Superman world and their Superman analog dies, and then a pet therapist gets abducted by the government, and they're like, and he, black bag over his head, and they take him to a facility, and they're like, so now the most powerful defensive weapon that we have in the world was actually that guy's dog, and he's grieving, and we need you to get him off his ass before Brainiac or Darkseid or whatever comes back, because that dog's the most powerful superhero in the world now.
I freaking love that as a concept right there.
So you have this human pet therapist who has to work with this dog before the new gods descend or whatever.
Yeah.
I've never gone much more than a couple of treatments with it, but that idea came from this issue when I read it the first time, when I was in high school, of like, God, I would rather honestly read a comic about Radar to a certain extent,
That would be a great Elseworld story.
Yeah. Like doing that with crypto would be amazing. But anyway, so they round up the slaver ant. Radar leads the Shadow Supreme to Vorem, which we haven't really talked about. He's kind of I think he's actually a pretty 1-to-1 character, but I don't remember for sure. But if I remember correctly, there was like a lion-shaped villain kind of like him. But like I said, I don't remember for sure. Anyway, they drop the slaver ant on the Shadow Supreme and Vorem, so they get pissed off at each other and fight each other into unconsciousness. And that's when Korgo, the space tyrant, emerges. And Jmike, do you want to describe how he handles this situation?
Yeah, so you pick up with him running basically out of the White House, whispering to Supreme, "Save me," or something like that. This chick is driving me crazy.
Right. He had claimed Hillary Clinton as his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Or as his prize for having taken over the country, but apparently she drove him insane, and so he gives up basically and just like says like, make it look good, and like gets fake knocked out by Supreme.
The entire fight they're whispering to each other back and forth, like he's like, "Oh man, really appreciate you doing me this solid. I'll be good this time."
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, no problem, I got you."
Yeah.
Which is the most devastating part of it, is like, it's insulting enough that Mongol the Cruel would foil his whole plan to get away from Hillary Clinton. But the worst part is when Supreme whispers, forget it, it's okay.
Yeah, but you got to remember just how hated Hillary Clinton was in the 90s. Yeah. Anything we want to say about this little arc, the villain breakout, that we haven't already covered?
All right. Go ahead, Jmike.
I got nothing. It's a fun little arc. It's my favorite part about this entire thing is, what's his name, running out of the White House. My favorite part almost of this entire like book. Like he's just like, so get this chick away from me, please. I'll do anything.
Yeah, it's a good gag. I mean, it's insensitive, but it's a good gag.
Yeah. Oh, this is definitely this is my favorite issue in the whole thing. And other ones are great. That's not to put the other ones down, but this is a damn near perfect comic to me. It's fun, it's serious, it's scary, it's uplifting, it's, I laughed, I cried, it moved me, Bob. Like, it's great.
I did have a question about, was it the ant? What's her name? Ant lady?
Slaver ant.
Slaver ant. Is she not control her pheromones or whatever? Or because she accidentally touches them and then releases the pheromones onto, like, I forgot his name. What's the guy's name?
Vorim and Shadow Supreme. Yeah,
Vorim,
it seemed, well, she says, no, don't touch me, like she yells at. So it seems that she is not able to prevent them from secreting if she actually makes physical contact.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, oh. Because she was just like walking past people, like, oh, here, you get some too. You all get some while she's kidnapping the babies. So I was like, maybe it's just involuntary for her. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned it before, but also the part where she's forcing the children to chew up newspaper for the nest is so dark and hilarious. Like,
yeah. Also a good moment where the Supremes like track her down using their scent Supreme, which is a fun superpower that, you know, makes sense, but like they never really talk about with like Superman.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next issue, this is the inverse of the first issue of the Alan Moore run. This is the Darius Dax going to his version of the Supremacy. And it's pretty much beat for beat. Like the first page is just a quick recap of like from Darius Dax's perspective, like the events of the story of the year, where he fuses first as Magno with the Supremium rock and then turns into the Supremium man, falls backwards through time, and then merges with more Supremium, falls backwards through time, and turns into the meteor that, you know, initially crash landed and gave Supreme his powers in the first place. But then it picks up with him being accosted, like straight up being mugged by the equivalent Darius's, or the equivalent Daxes, I should say, to the Supremes that show up in the first place to bring out Supreme to the Supremacy. We get the original Darius Dax, we get the blaxploitation Darius Dax, and we get the weird future Darius Dax, and then we get the funny animal Darius Dax.
Yeah, Darius Duck is one of my favorite parts of this whole thing.
Yes. The Drake of Darkness. The Mallet of Malevolence.
Darkwing Duck. There we go. I said it. Yay.
But yeah, and then we go to, you know, they go to their like the Great Palace, where like the 60s Dax is the supreme character, who is designed like the 60s Lex Luthor, is in a prison jumpsuit, just because that is the style of the character. So we set up this world and sort of recap basically the Supremacy rules, but from the perspective of the Daxes. And it's, like I said, it's just an inversion of that story. Like everything about it is beat for beat the same, right down to like him being introduced to like the giant one, you know, like it's all identical to Supreme 42, the first issue, or 41, I believe, the first issue of the arc. But Logan, you wouldn't know that because you haven't read that issue.
No, yeah, that was news to me. Although I will say, yeah. I did feel like, not to say I dislike it, but this did feel like the most phoned in of the issues to me. Like it very much felt, and finding out that it's basically a retread of what they did before, but it just seems like a tour of the same, like he does these same jokes again with Diane Dane, you know, like it's always the same eras.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a good joke. It's a great joke even. But like this was the one where like I got a lot of mileage out of this up until the part where you meet the duck, and then after that it kind of slowed down. I was like, all right, I get it. There's a lot of that guy.
Yeah, it's not my favorite issue, and there's one thing that really doesn't age well, which is evil 80s transvestite Darius Dax.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Although I will give that a pass only because I really feel like that is more at his most. I feel like who he's really making fun of there is not trans people. It's Alan Moore, you know, like.
Yes, I agree with you there. I don't think that I don't think he's being transphobic in that moment. I think that, again, he's making fun of, because it's supposed to be making fun of like grim 80s like stuff. Right. So like you said, he's making fun of himself.
Although I actually, the Joker, the transvestite Joker's from Arkham Asylum, right? So I might be giving Moore too much credit. This might be another Morrison shot. Now that I think about it.
I mean, it might be. It certainly might be. Or if you prefer, just it's a shot at like the grim 80s like British invasion anyway.
Yeah.
Sure, it might be that dark of a one, or like that specific of one, but like I don't think it's a necessary jab. I do think that the art's not that great in this issue.
I hate to say that because it's Jim Starlin, and I really think looking at it, I think the pencils are there. I think the inker let him down. I think it is inked so flat that you're not getting a lot of that. You know, like if you look on the 80s Supreme's face and the wrinkles that you see in the shirt, like I think there's details there that with a different ink job really could pop, but everything is just flat, static, you know.
Yeah. I do want to call out what is very clearly reused art from Chris Sprouse on the last 2 pages of the issue, where if you look at it, it's exactly, they're taking the penciling from the Saz, the Sprite Supreme issue, and just reusing it with different coloration.
I owe an apology. I just looked up. Do you know who inked this issue of Jim Starlin's art?
Who?
Jim Starlin.
Oh.
So, sorry, Jim. I tried to stick up for you, but...
I mean, I think it's like overly dark, and like I think there's like a lot of like too much coloring going on, so it's like or too much liberal use of like this new nifty like handy dandy Photoshop effect, because it's 1997 and people are like, oh my god, gradients.
Yeah,
I think this is the first issue where I noticed where like the text boxes at some points were like a little hard to read because of some of the color.
I have heard people say, and you can tell me this is true, Case, because you're one of the few people I know who has the original issues in the trade. I have heard that these trades are notoriously very poorly printed.
Yes, they are. It's hard for me to say how bad because I haven't like dug up the issues in a while, but these are not good quality trades.
Yeah. Well, and I can tell, like in mine, there are pages where like the top, if there's a text bubble too close to the top of the page, it's cut a couple places. So like so that kind of thing really makes me wonder what else was not the fault of the artists as much as it was the fault of the trade company.
Yeah. Well, but like I said, this is clearly Awesome is having its own financial issues at this point. Chris Sprouse, they've lost, but they're using his assets on those last 2 pages. It's really weird. Like if you look at the Saz issue and you look at this, like there are they're just taking out his art and like recoloring it to like fit the scene here. It's the most egregious is the shot on the last page where Supreme's like running out. Like that's the shot where he's like holding the comic book and looking at it as he's like rushing off to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Awesome. We talked about the Fighting American and Agent America, and Liefeld had the whole team that was basically just the Avengers. And was reusing, his own art, but art that he didn't have the legal rights to, anymore, and painting over it. So there was a lot of sketchy going on with this company at this time.
Yep, a lot of sketchy going on with Liefeld. What a shock!
Yeah, I'm trying not to go in too hard on that too much because this is a pretty good opportunity. Soli, if you're listening, I apologize again for having a little blow up in the Discord this week. Of having a rough week. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. But I'm trying not to go in on Liefeld too hard because of that. But yeah.
yeah. Like not trying to pick a wound there. But then the next story is a pretty fun one. This is the 3 Worlds of Diana Dane, where we get a tour of cool shit that's in the Supremacy from the perspective of Diana Dane, Supreme's new girlfriend. And also a writer on the Omni-Man comic book. So, quote unquote, this is for her to like get inspiration for the book.
This is my least favorite art. I like the premise of this. I love the Nightwing and Flamebird callback that's happening in this. This issue, though, is hard to look at in places.
In like, because the artist like changes it at a few points, like the as a whole, or like is any particular section that's like really the rough spot for you?
Just the Dr. Dark and Duskwing part, really.
Oh, really?
When it gets to the, I think it's actually Rick Veitch when you get to the Fighting American stuff.
That looks like it,
and that's a lot better to me. And then Eric Larson comes in a little bit. Eric Larson is very competent, but just specifically this first part where they're in the Kandor analog. There are some of these parts where I have trouble figuring out if I'm looking at Supreme or the other Kandorian, or and people's pupils just disappear, and which I think is part of the effect of the thing, except that it's happening before they go in. On some of these.
Yeah.
So like that's probably this was the low point in the art for me. Well, no, that's not true. In the very last issue, Rob Liefeld does 2 pages. And then I guess there's those other 2 pages that you just mentioned that were stolen. So that's not great either. But this just doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I think the bummer of the Prism World stuff is that they weren't like they so overdo their like computer graphics effects in like other issues of this book, and this is the one section where they really should have used more than they actually got.
Yeah.
Like the way that they did the effects for Optilix, where like he had this like very cool like glowing effect coming off of his mirrors.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like if they had something that looked like that here, I would probably be more forgiving of pencils that are a little more amateurish. If we want to, go into that. But
who did this one? Let me look and see if they redeemed themselves or disappeared.
I mean, I don't think it's like particularly like it doesn't stand out as being like that bad to me, but like I see where you're coming from with it.
I have good news. It's Matt Smith. So
okay.
This depressed him so bad that he became Doctor Who and did wonderful after that. So good for you, Matt. You were the best part of Morbius.
I do like that we get a adventure in the world of Amalith, the prison world, and that we get the Nightwing and Flamebird callback in the form of Dr. Dark and Duskwing.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
It's a fun concept right there. I really love it. Like I always love the detail of Nightwing and Flamebird being the Superman and Jimmy Olsen secret identities from Kandor. I think it's a lot of fun. Like, does the adventure do much? No, because like they just go in there and like, oh hey, they're bandits. Oh cool, we'll go get them, and they immediately do, and it's like not too hard. But it's part of the fun romp that we get with Diana Dane going to these different eras or these different like locations within the Citadel Supreme. But then they go into the future because he has just access to the time well of the League of Infinity. And they go to this like future time period where there is a version of the Fighting American 4, and also a descendant of Supreme.
Yeah, he's Supremax.
Yeah.
Also, I hate to say it, but I like every Supreme variant's costume better than Supreme's.
Really? I like the Supreme costume a ton. I'm so surprised.
I really love the gold belts and stuff that Supremax has and the longer hair. Like I think that pops.
I want to call out the fact that they were fighting Hezbollah terrorists, which is just like there's a lot going on in this section. Mm-hmm. The language that they use for all the characters is it takes a lot of deciphering. It's supposed to be like future jargon. Yeah. So like instead of saying hello, they say "give me skin," which is supposed to be like "give me some skin."
It seemed like a great reference to the Legion's Greif and Frack and all that their cuss word stand-ins that they used to use.
Yeah. But then they encounter Baxter Front, newest villain of the era, and Diana Dane shows off that she's competent by kicking him in both sets of balls.
This is so Jack Kirby. Like I don't know how much you guys have watched Thundar the Barbarian.
Oh, a ton.
But this is basically the same gimmick that Thundar's Skeletor has. Jack Kirby did the character designs for that show.
Yeah.
Well, all but Alex Toth did Thundar, Ariel, and Ukla, but Kirby did everything else, which is if you like He-Man type stuff and you've never seen Thundar the Barbarian, I highly recommend that you sort of seek it out if you're listening to this.
Yeah, I will second that. It's a very fun series. But anyway, so Supreme opines that it seems that whether you move forward or backwards in time, you somehow find out the business of the modern day. And so this is all leading into Diana Dane sort of coming to the conclusion that Supreme is actually like taking her on a date as opposed to like showing her around for like professional curiosity. And this is really emphasized when they go to the Supremacy as the next location, where Diana is introduced to all these other Diana Danes who are, you know, like Logan, as you pointed out, they use the same periods because this is a callback specifically to the first issue of the Alan Moore run of Supreme. So she comes to understand, oh, Diana Dane typically is a girlfriend of Supreme in all these different realities. And so she realizes that, and upon leaving the Supremacy, she like confronts him about it.
You know, something that I had never thought of until just now, this issue is so similar to the birthday date issue of All-Star.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like really, really close. And that's kind of fascinating. There's no way Grant Morrison didn't read this. Not a chance.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. And I have often seen All-Star as being a with the serial numbers like put back on version of Supreme.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, so this sets up that Diana like confronts Supreme about like, hey, do you like me? And he's like, yeah. And they kiss, and Radar happens to be witnessing this. And this sets up like future trouble down the road.
You know, something that I do really like about this issue and Diana Dane in general is, we talked about Judy Jordan is so close to Lana Lang. She's really not that Lois Laney, you know, other than being a professional who also types as part of their living. Like she doesn't have that gruffness or that edge that Lois has a lot of times. She doesn't have that like danger seeking thing. You know, she's much more laid back and chill than Lois is in most iterations. And that was something that was really refreshing about the end of this issue, is like, I feel like in a lot of versions of Lois Lane or other characters like it, this ending would have led to tension that would have taken 3 issues to get resolved before they fell in love or whatever. And Diana Dane just sort of understands this for the fumbly gesture that it is, and you know, embraces it. I thought that was really refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is certainly a story that's being speedrun, so that like that might kind of play a part in that. But yeah, she's a very unique Lois Lane analog in a whole bunch of ways. She kind of reminds me of Karen Page, or early era Karen Page, and maybe it's just like the fact that she's a blonde.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially with what the 80s Diana Dane. It's like,
yes, yeah.
There's some real Karen Page going on there too.
Yeah, I thought that was a direct Karen Page reference right there.
I'm certain that's what that was supposed to be, especially with all the pill bottles around her. Her hands are shaking and stuff.
But before we move on to the next issue, anything that we want to address from the story? Like Jmike, you've been kind of quiet about
this also reminded me of like the League of Lois's.
Yes.
Episode from My Adventures of Superman.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I can totally see that.
Did you guys notice they forgot to draw the spots on Radar on the last page of this?
Yes.
Yep.
Also, whose body is that?
I think that's supposed to be Judy Jordan.
Yeah, because
like the old body of Judy Jordan.
Yeah, it was like, it's kind of awkward for them to be making out in front of her body, but you know,
Supreme is very dense.
Yeah, well, and I think I think Moore did that on purpose. I think the idea that they are kissing over the corpse of Judy Jordan is another of Moore's critiques of Superman's indecision when it comes to that love triangle, which, of course, you know, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow is riddled with his critiques of Superman's indecision.
Yeah,
and it's one of the best part. You know, I think Lana Lang's ending in that is brutal, but it's very beautiful in its own way too, of her not being able to accept, of her finally learning that Superman's never going to love her, you know. And this seems like a very similar thing of like, Moore is once again highlighting how kind of callous the classic Superman was with these women's feelings.
I think that is a perfect summation of what that panel must look like, because if you've ever seen an Alan Moore script, like, it is so goddamn dense. Like, he covers every detail. Like, there's no part of the camera angle that is undocumented in that.
Yeah. But I guess he forgot to mention that Radar is a Dalmatian. And he probably kicked himself for that for years to come.
Right.
It's like, I just thought he'd know at this point. This dog has spots.
Yep. Jmike, any thoughts on your part from the various worlds of Diana Dane?
It's a fun story with a happy ending, except for the dog spots. But a very happy ending.
Yeah, so that then picks up in the next issue. First of all, the fact that Ethan is still the secret identity for Supreme and Diana does not know is like kind of fucked up, right?
Yeah.
It comes up later.
I mean, it's figured out pretty shortly after this, but like the fact that she feels like he's ghosted her when it's like, wouldn't you just like reveal it like as soon as you get like, we're like, yeah, we made out and we're like I like you, like I want us to like continue being a thing. Like again, Supreme, very dense and not and kind of callous.
That's unfortunately very Bronze Age though. Of like there is if you go back to the 70s Superman stuff in the early 80s, it's not obviously explicitly said, but it's pretty clear that Superman and Lois are sleeping together, waking up and having breakfast in the same apartment and stuff like that. And she doesn't know that it's Clark.
Yeah.
It's one of those, there's some things about a character that are iconic and you always keep them. That's one that to me, I don't ever want to see a version of Superman that crosses that threshold with Lois as Superman. I don't mind if he does it as Clark and hasn't told her that he's Superman yet.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I agree. And that was the problem I had with the death of Superman. Superman Doomsday.
Yes.
Yeah. Like that one, like Lois and he are very clearly sleeping together and she does not know. And it's just like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. And they do the same thing in Unbound and Superman Unbound as well. And it's very skeevy.
Right.
It's Superman Unbound. I think it's even a little more fucked up because that's not like that's a very close adaptation of a comic that's not in. They could have just been married in the movie when they lobbed it in anyway. And in that movie, they kind of act, and in that one, and in Doomsday too, they kind of act like Lois is the problem. Like,
right? Yeah, it's weird.
Both of those movies kind of have Superman looking into the camera like women, right? Hey man, this is kind of like a crime. I don't like it's at least very gray, much grayer than the spots on Radar in the last issue.
Yes. So anyway, Carl comes in with his dog and it's like, something's wrong with my dog. And it's like, she's obviously pregnant. Like, and at which point she gives birth and the dog has superpowers. And apparently there are lots of puppies all over with superpowers. And this is pretty obviously Radar's fault. Because how else are all these dogs going to be conceived at super speed if not for Radar, who flies off with his tail between his legs as soon as he realizes that he's in serious trouble.
I love it. I love it so much. This is like, if I was ranking the issues, this is my number 3, and it's just a hair behind the Jack Kirby issue. But this is maybe the best crypto comic.
He slept with 378 other dogs that night.
Yeah, no, I love the line I want to read verbatim was, I hope your 378 dog sex spree was worth it. It was the most blissful 12 and a half seconds I've ever known, Master, although I regret it now. Yeah, so he flies around at super speed, impregnates a bunch of dogs because he's in heat. He's sort of he gets into that vibe because of seeing Supreme have that kind of dynamic with Diana. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm gonna try to fuck. And so he does, and then it's at super speed because he's a supreme being, and which is an interesting implication for anything that Supreme might have if he has a relationship with Diana.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the difference is somewhere between human and dog intelligence, because otherwise, that poor lady.
Yeah. But yeah, so he flies around and has sex with, as we said, 378 dogs, and they all give birth to puppies.
A day later.
Yes, 1 day later.
A day later.
And the solution is that Radar communicates with them at a hyper frequency that humans can't hear. promises them capes and mechanical hands if they get to, and speakers, pardon me, if they travel with him to a new planet. And they create a new planet called Fidor that is close by the Suprematon world and sets up its own civilization. And that's a cool detail. That's exactly what Alan Moore is like moving towards, like setting up like all these like big bastions of power that exist out there. And so here's just a world of super dogs with little robot hands.
With the robot hands.
It's perfect.
Awesome.
It's so good.
And then the issue concludes with Supreme telling the story about like what happened from the perspective of Ethan Crane, as if he was told by Supreme to Diana Dane. And it's like continuing this whole like fucked up situation. But at least here is where Diana Dane figures out that Supreme is Ethan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll maybe on the moral sense, I'll give him a night. I'll give Superman or Supreme a night after to go, maybe that wasn't great. Right. I think my problem with those movies in the Bronze Age is that you're looking at a prolonged event. Also, the other problem with the Bronze Age stuff is it's also kind of hinted in the Bronze Age that he's occasionally sleeping with Lana and Wonder Woman at different times while he was sleeping with Lois. So like
that's super Lothario.
Yeah. Bronze Age Superman, like guys like Mark Waid and Alan Moore love to be like, Bronze Age, that's the peak Superman. And I don't. I love a lot of it, but I'm not with you guys necessarily.
But anything we want to say about this issue before we move on?
One of the best issues in this entire book, hands down, bar none.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's such a fun story. Like we aren't going to spend too much time on it because it's very simple. But like the idea of just like super speed dog sex creating like tons of super puppies is so
with
fucking
robot
funny.
Hands.
Well,
with robot hands.
And I will say that while I have a soft spot for the Jack Kirby issue that comes at the end, if I was only going to recommend 2 issues of this comic to somebody, it would be the first issue of The Return and this one, because I think the Radar stuff is the stuff that works the best for me. And if you just watch Superman and you went, damn, I love that dog, I want more Super Dog content, I think these 2 issues are probably the best Super Dog content you can get.
Yeah.
Or at least in contention for it.
Yeah, it's such a good issue, and it's such a fun take on a super dog. But moving on, we get a backup feature to the League of Infinity. And so this is why I wanted to say I think that the League of Infinity is a beta test for the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I think that they both have the same basic gimmick, which is a collection of literary references that you can feel very smart about understanding where they're from. I think that's the key one. And this issue, especially because you get so many like cool characters from throughout history, like peppered in here. But I also want to start off by just like shouting out the Long Live the Legion podcast right now, because if Jay from the Long Live the Legion podcast was reading this, he would be losing his shit, because the character Pilot XU is very clearly modeled after Drake Burroughs.
Oh yeah.
From the Legion of Superheroes.
Oh yeah. Wildfire. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
Even with, his name is, I can never remember what the Wildfire's original name is.
Oh yeah, I'm blanking on it, but yes, I know
it's an acronym that looks like someone fell asleep on their keyboard.
Yes,
and Pilot XU is I think a clear nod to that, and just his look as well. Wildfire, definitely I'm not as big a Wildfire fan as Jay, but he's one of my top 5 Legion members too.
Yeah, he's so cool,
especially in the version of him from the reboot Legion, from the Dan Abnett stuff.
Yeah, from Legion Law.
That had a very kind of, he almost had like a Ben Grimm personality in that, more than the kind of, Hawkeye jerk that he was in the Levitt stuff. That specific one, if he was like that all the time, he'd be my favorite Legionnaire.
Yeah, no, the Legion Lost and the Legion era version of Wildfire is fantastic. And this character is very clearly modeled after it in design, not in personality, as we will go into. But this is a fun issue. I think that this is one of my favorite stories in here, just because there's so many like cool references to actual history or mythological characters in the form of, I am going to butcher this name, Chuko Liang, and then with Siegfried, son of Sigmund and Sieglind, who is from the Ring of the Nibelung saga. So just like really, really fun characters there. And this is just a fun Legion of Superheroes story, like, but with the League of Infinity convention of them being from different points in history. And then it's revealed that Pilot XU is actually Optilex. And the way that it's revealed is like really clever. I love that, like him ranting in front of the birds was his downfall.
Yeah.
Because Siegfried's able to speak the language of the birds.
You know, I was, which reminds me of a Billy Strings lyric that I love, where he's like, I'd sing along with the birds if I only knew the words. I've been listening to that album a lot this week. But the only issue that I have with this is when it's revealed that he's Optilux, I, for a second, was like, oh, it's a bait and switch. You think he's going to be like their Wildfire, but he really is like their Brainiac 5. No, he really is like a shish kebab at the end of this, because when they figure out who he is, Siegfried stabs him like on the spot. If there's one thing you can pick up from these stories is the Legion has a no-kill rule, and the League of Infinity has a kill rule.
Does not.
If you fuck with them, you're going down. Like
yeah. So this is just like I said, just a really fun story. Yeah. And it follows up with what happened to Optilex, because he says he imprisoned me in Amalith. And that indicates that for at least the bulk of time, when Suprema like blasted him, that was like the end of Optilex as a threat.
Oh man, I missed this somehow the first time. I just realized the kid with the ray gun is Tom Swift.
Oh yeah.
Do you know that is actually where we get the term taser from to this day?
Oh no!
That's the acronym from the Tom Swift book. That's the acronym for. Can't remember what the A stands for, but it's basically Tom A. Swift's electric rifle. That's what he calls his weapon in those pulp stories, and that's why tasers are called that.
That is very cool. I had no idea. That's so cool. Jmike, any other thoughts about this issue before we move on?
I'm good. I just learned something new today.
Yeah. This is the thing I love with Alan Moore books, where he really loves having literary references. Speaking of literary references, when we get into this next one, we are dealing with our equivalent of Arkham Asylum. What is it? Miskatonic Asylum?
Yeah. Which is a Lovecraft in itself a reference.
Oh, perfect. I figured it was something. I didn't know exactly.
Miskatonic University is from a Lovecraft story.
Ah. See, perfect. Like wonderful literary references. But we get Jack and Dandy, who is basically like the icon of the New Yorker as a supervillain, as the Joker analog in the setting. You
also have a very highbrow literary reference, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I was like, is that The Rock?
It doesn't matter if that's The Rock. Oh, sorry.
We also have Lounge Lizard briefly in the shot, which is their Killer Croc analog. This issue, by the way, is drawn by Ian Churchill. So we got that art style going.
Yeah.
It's a very jarring change from a Chris Sprouse art, but it is it is good art.
Yeah.
It's just a very different style.
Although that panel where it is Diane looking at Supreme as he unzips his pants is crazy suggestive for the tone of the rest of this comic. Like,
yeah, that whole page, it's like, oh, they about to fuck, and then it's like, oh no, actually he's revealing his like super outfit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what I just noticed? He adds a belt.
I did. Yeah, he does.
I dig it.
I actually really like the way it looks in the Ian Churchill design. I think that belt does a lot to sort of like complete it. And it's probably my favorite shot of Supreme's like costume wise, even though I think the Chris Sprouse art looks the best.
Yeah.
But you're dead set. Like that belt is very cool.
I feel like the Supreme costume it always looks to me almost like somebody edited stuff off of it. Like if it had a logo that was trademarked or something, and then they couldn't use it in the reprints or something. It always looks like there's a space for a logo, and they just didn't do it. Which I guess the problem is you can't put an S on his chest.
Right. Well, I think what you're saying is exactly the intent, at least of the Alan Moore era for the character. Like he's supposed to look like he has a logo on his chest, but they've removed it. He's Superman with the serial numbers filed off.
They could have put the Taco Bell logo on there. Telling you, there it is.
So this issue is a microcosm of the Supreme, the story of the year. It is a time loop, like a closed time loop story with the character of the Supremium Man. And I don't get it fully, or rather, I think that there's like something missing, which is an explanation for all the encounters that Supreme has with this version of the Supremium Man outside of just the first and this one specifically. Like, I don't get how the timeline works aside from as a closed loop for just these two encounters. But we know that the Supremium Man has shown up multiple times since then.
Yeah, this issue really works for me in the Superboy-esque flashbacks and less so in the modern parts. Like, yeah, I think it loses a lot of its steam when you get to that. And, you know,
also, a bummer is the coloring on it is fucked up. The Supremium Man, rather than having different colored Supremium chunks on his belt, or on his chest, they just draw them all red.
Yeah. Which I will say though, and
it looks good, but like it doesn't, like right. You lose the cool. Right, you lose the cool detail of the costume.
And I hate that too, because the Supremium Man's design, I think, is much cooler and more interesting than like the traditional Kryptonite Man look, which is always just I'm a goblin in a leotard. Like, I think this is a much cooler way to do that same power set.
And I love the idea of like having the different types of Supremium to use against Supreme. You know, I've been a big fan of like anyone who like does like cool versions of the different Kryptonites, and that is effectively used here. Yeah.
Oh, and I just, like I said, I'm a big Superboy fan though, and like that part in the middle, that art specifically is just gorgeous.
Yeah, the Rick Veitch flashbacks are such a great part. And Logan, I would highly encourage you to check out if you can find the original trade for the story of the year, because every issue has a flashback by Veitch in there specifically because they are setting up the whole history of the character, and they're more infrequent in this volume just because it's no longer doing that, like the story of the know, his story in the background.
It's been on my Grail list for over a decade now, but I've never seen one in person, and I've never seen one on eBay for less than $100. Like,
really?
Yeah, I don't know how long it's been since you priced these, but the last time I was looking, the trades were still well over $100 each. There's been a couple of times when my pocketbook has been tight where I go to my shelf and I hold this trade and I go, I know what I have to do, but I don't have the strength to do it, and put it back.
You know, I don't remember. I bought Jmike's copy and I don't remember how much I paid.
Oh, man. Well, that means it probably has come down. That would be lovely.
Yeah.
I'm sure that with the dawn of like digital comics, like that's probably forced them to be a little more reasonable about this.
Well, but the fucked up thing is that it's difficult to, like, they don't have like these issues available digitally in any sort of convenient form. Like Supreme the Return is available, like that issue, and like a couple random issues are as well, but it's like it's not a very complete digital availability for this book, which sucks. Like it's one of the reasons why it took us a while to like actually like cover it on the show. But yeah, like, so the Supremium Man fuses with Billy Friday and then goes back in time to have his first adventure as the Meteor Master, and then comes back into the future. And basically it's a closed loop of these two events, which, like I said, doesn't quite make sense because we know that this Supremium Man has had adventures, like encounters with Supreme outside of these two events. So that's the only part where I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. But as it is, I think it's a perfectly fine issue. It's like I said, it's a microcosm of the types of stories that Moore was doing in this book. Just like all like as a one and done with this one issue.
It's also a great microcosm of Silver Age DC continuity. Isn't this guy dead? Nah, he ain't. Clearly, he's standing there. Like,
yeah,
another version of this guy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you were thinking of Earth 31B. He died on that one. Retroactively shunt this off into some side pocket and keep trucking. Yeah, I did.
Jmike,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Logan.
I was just saying, I did think you blew my mind earlier when you said that Darius Dax was the Supremium Man, because it made me go, did I never notice that Billy Friday is Darius Dax before in this? And for just a minute, I thought, God, that actually would be like a really smart, very Moore-esque twist. Is Jimmy Olsen grows up to be the Lex Luthor, but
It would be, but they even like speculate upon that in this issue, and it, like I said, it was just me misunderstanding. Because Darius Dax is Supremium Man 1, just not Supremium Man 2.
Well, I wish we could get into a fixed time loop with when Alan Moore was writing this, so you could tell him. Yeah, that's a great idea.
So then the next issue is the Jack Kirby issue. Jmike, what was your response when you came across this one?
Confusion. I had to go back and read it like a couple of sections, and I was like, what is happening here? And I was like, oh, it's a Kirby thing. Oh, this is pretty cool. Oh, I love this. I love Jack Kirby.
I definitely, this is my second favorite issue. The first time I read it, it was my first favorite. But I think you've got to be pretty well versed in Jack Kirby already to get everything out of this.
Oh yeah, like there's so much love letter to like just various like Jack Kirby things like strewn across this issue. So for readers or for listeners at home, this issue Supreme like finds this like valley in the Himalayas that is all of a sudden like has like a civilization appear in the mist that is just made up of like composite bits of Jack Kirby stories. So like stuff like happening in Brooklyn, stuff happening in like weird space futures, stuff happening in like the Commandi timeline, like stuff happening in World War II. Like it's all happening here.
Dr. Dread?
Yes, who is that is a shameless Dr. Doom right there.
You know what's interesting? There's a little Easter egg in that too, though. It's his gloved fingertips. Like he's definitely Dr. Doom, splash of Annihilus in there, but those gloved fingertips are the destruction glove, I think is what it's called, that Darkseid gets in the original New Gods run, that shoots the lasers out of the fingertips. Like that's what that's from.
Oh, cool.
And that part, it just like all the little, like this is almost like a nesting doll of Jack Kirby Easter eggs. The more corners of this you explore, the more you're going to find.
Yeah, it's a super dense issue in that regard. With love letters to the Guardian, love letters to Sergeant Rock, just like all kinds of things. And basically he comes face to face with like what they sort of establish is just the spirit of Jack Kirby. Like still like the imagination, because he had just passed away a few years earlier at this point. And so it's just the love that Moore had for all the stuff that Jack Kirby did, just like on full display here, where he gets like a treatise of just discussing like his thoughts about like archetypal natures for characters. Like he describes Superman, or he describes Supreme as a Wily, like as like the Gladiator, and like I think that's like such a fun concept, and like honestly was kind of eye-opening for me, or at the very least like really like cemented my like thoughts about like the Superman archetype, which like kind of is why I have the Superman analog YouTube series.
Did you guys notice, because I just noticed it for the first time, that one of Sergeant Strong's damn busting dog faces is Popeye?
I did not,
which Jack Kirby did a little bit of work on for Fleischer Studios back in the way back when, animation design.
Oh, I see it. Oh, okay.
Damn, yeah.
Also, it's not a reference to a specific Jack Kirby thing that I know of, other than just the Howling Commandos being multicultural. But the guy who's in a sombrero and is playing a guitar in the foxhole is my favorite member, for sure.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, that's where the story ends. The series ran like there were financial issues. Liefeld is not a particularly good businessman, and this kind of the Awesome Comics collapsed. And I remember this. I was really sad when that happened, because there was a lot of like announcements for like upcoming books. There was like the Alan Moore Glory series that ran for like 2 issues. Youngblood ran for like 3 or 4 issues and was actually like a really fun book. But this was where it ended. And at this point I was reading it month to month. So like it was really upsetting for me when the series ended at the time.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. At the same time, this is such a good issue to go out on. Like if you had to pick one to be the last one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Though it is weird that it ends with a gay joke.
Yeah, again, this is like very 1997.
I will admit, this is the kind of joke that I can see, like, you know, like my wife making to me or whatever, you know, like it's cute. I don't think there's anything mean about it, you know, but it is,
right.
But it is It is a weird thing to be true.
Yeah, especially for the end of the issue that is the end of the series.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But yeah, so that was Supreme the Return. I maintain that the individual stories in this are better than anything that was an individual issue in Supreme the Story of the Year. But the story of the year is one complete story, whereas this is not. And that is kind of one of the bummers of it. Like the arc that we were building towards was never paid off, at least in the Alan Moore run. Mm-hmm. Like we got the Eric Larson conclusion of this, and we got the fan edit conclusion of this, but otherwise it's a series that evaporated.
And I hate that, because I think that you can see Alan Moore having a lot of fun in it, and it's such a different lane for him. He doesn't have a lot of stories where he gets to be funny or uplifting or inspirational, And I'm a big Alan Moore fan too. So like getting to see that side of him and seeing that he's not just the Killing Joke and Watchmen and stuff like that is one of the most interesting parts of it. I got to tell you, if you ever want to do an episode on 1964, I would be down for that one too. Another famously unfinished but brilliant Alan Moore work from his Reconstruction era.
Yeah.
Like also Rick Veitch did the art on those. Those are really, really fantastic comics as well. And I hate that this whole, Tom Strong is really good in its own right, but it's not really the same thing. And he kind of just closed the chapter on this when these companies folded and never went back.
Right. Which is just a bummer in the long run. Now, like I said, we do have a version of an ending for this, and then we have a continuation in the form of Supreme Blue Rose. So there's a consolation prize, I guess, is really what I'm getting at.
A souvenir supreme.
Yeah, a souvenir supreme. So why don't we talk about what works in this book? I like, Logan, you have not had a chance to really like talk about Supreme as a franchise up until now with us. So like what works for you?
For me, it's definitely the nostalgia to the era of Superman that it's riffing on. And I love that. I think you can see that the effect of this comic's success brought a lot of that back to Superman. The Loeb Kelly era borrows a lot, I think, from the tone and ideas, and even the way that Superman is drawn in a lot of that, I think, harkens.
Yeah, with like the McGinnis artwork, yeah.
So I think that in that regard, it was successful. But it was just, especially at the time that it came out, and when I read it, I read this around the same time as like Identity Crisis and Infinite Crisis. And so this was really like a bottle of good water to me at that time in a hot desert, because there was not fun classic comics like this coming out. And that's my favorite thing about it, is it's nostalgic without being campy, without being trite. It walks that line so well.
Yeah, like when this was coming out, like as much as I like the Triangle era of Superman, I do think it's a very specific era of Superman, and like this is coming out simultaneous with that, and was a throwback to the Silver Age, which was just a breath of fresh air for what we were getting at the time.
Well, it's also, as much as I love the Triangle era, there's never been a good idea that didn't run out of road eventually. And this came out in the Triangle era, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it was opposite like Electric Blue Superman and the Millennium Giants and stuff. So those are not, I have a soft spot for Electric Superman because of my age and when I started reading comics, but those are not great comics. And so this was probably, if that was all you were able to get for Superman at the time, I'm sure this was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, consider like Superman had a big family at that point, but it was Steel, it was Superboy, and it was the Matrix entity Supergirl. Yeah. That was his world at this point. And this was a very like classic kind of Superman story, just as a throwback. Jmike, how about you? Like, what do you think really stands out as like a thing that really works in this?
The dog.
Yes, exactly. Crypto didn't exist. Crypto was not around when this came out. Like, it was the Loeb Kelly era that they brought back Crypto. So he had been gone since Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Had it been that long?
Yeah. He had showed up for a couple of cameos around the death of Superboy story and stuff, but and then Superboy had a runt dog that
Crypto,
Bibbo had saved that ends up accidentally named Crypto but has no powers. But as far as a real dog in a cape with Superman's powers that's around regularly, he didn't come back until the Return to Krypton arc in 2001, around there.
Holy
right?
crap.
Yeah, somewhere
I
like
didn't know
that.
So
Yeah.
86 to 2001, there's no crypto in the books, really. And that is one thing where I break a lot. And I'm never going to convince you guys. Didn't meet me until James Gunn's Superman movie was coming out. I'm never going to convince anybody that I believe this first, but I'm just going to have to promise you guys. I have been a crypto defender as like he needs to be in the Superman canon since I was like 9. I've had so many comic book shop fights with people being like, "Oh, that dog's stupid. What else do you want? Do you want pink kryptonite? Do you want, do you want a bunch of
Wasn't there a
robots in
horse?
his closet or whatever?
Like there was a horse too.
Yeah.
Yep, there's Comet the Stallion Supreme. Or pardon me, Comet the Super Horse. It's Sirius the Stallion Supreme. Sorry.
Friend, I think you just did a slip up Supreme.
Yeah.
No, but and that like
Comet the Super Horse. Yeah.
and I do acknowledge that if we were talking about bringing back Beppo the Super Monkey, no, don't. We don't need him. But Crypto to me is as necessary to Superman, especially Superboy, as Robin is to Batman. Like there is something that really gets to kids and everybody about Superman having that dog, and it lightens the character in it, and it adds a note of heartwarming that Superman has the market cornered on. There are no other dog superheroes really. Kind of Geoff the Land Shark now, I guess, and then Dino Mutt on TV, but nobody was touching super dogs because of Crypto, and then DC just went, no, Crypto's dumb, we're not using it, I think it's a real mistake. And I think this book probably highlighted, I don't doubt in the least that somebody at DC looked at these radar issues and went, oh yeah, we need Crypto back.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I'm like, all the animated shows, I don't think he was ever in there until, what's the episode I'm always thinking? For the Man Who Has Everything, the JLU episode.
Oh yeah, as the reference. Yeah.
Well, there's a puppy Crypto that dies on Krypton in the first episode of the animated series.
Yeah.
But don't forget too, though, that Crypto ends up having his own solo series, which is weird but pretty good in the early 2000s. Superman gives him to a kid that doesn't have any friends, and so Crypto lives in this kid's backyard, and Streaky's in it too.
Yeah, that's on the list for us to talk about eventually on here. But yeah, like Crypto got a push in the early 2000s after being gone for all the 90s. Like the edgy 90s just were like, yeah, we can't have a super dog.
Yeah, well, he's such a good idea, but the biggest thing is that nobody else is going to do him, because it's like the Flash, right? If you give another guy super speed, nobody goes, oh, what a great super speed idea. They all go, oh, you're doing the Flash, right? And that's the problem with dog superheroes. My comic that I'm trying to get off the ground right now, I have a super strong dog in it named Puddin', right? Who is an old man who gets superpowers dog. And I'm constantly trying to figure out, how do I do this as not just Crypto? And like when James Gunn announced that Crypto was coming out, I very nearly just took her out of the book, because Crypto is that. And DC just refused to break the glass on him for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, with dog superheroes, it's either Crypto or it's Lockjaw.
Oh yeah, it is which Lockjaw also is criminally underused.
Yes.
Lockjaw?
Lockjaw from the Inhumans, like the giant pug with like the pitchfork on his forehead.
Oh.
But like from the Marvel Comics property, the Inhumans.
Nope, never did that.
Let me also say that if you want to enjoy the Inhumans, watch is definitely the wrong verb. Read the Inhumans, for the love of God. I'm trying to rescue you from.
I know who they are. I never got into their stuff.
There's a pretty good version of the Inhumans on the Fantastic Four cartoon from the 90s.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Which includes a really funny sequence where the Thing has to take Lockjaw for a walk. And Lockjaw is a teleporting giant pug. Like, giant pug, I mean, like, he's the size of the Thing. Like,
you know what's interesting? Do you know? So there's a comic from the 80s that famously tried to write Lockjaw out by revealing.
Yes, by revealing that he was actually an Inhuman.
Yes. And there is a comic from that Superboy issue where Krypto is exposed to gold kryptonite, loses his powers, and then, as we talked about before, doesn't appear in another Superman comic for nearly 20 years, both of which were written by John Byrne.
John Byrne, yep.
When did John Byrne get bitten by a dog? What is his problem?
Yeah, we talked about that when we covered the death of Superboy, like, where it was such a weird plan where he just like opened up the gold kryptonite for no apparent reason.
Yeah, it really just reads as a smug, like, yeah, you can't have Krypto. Yeah, just look, I'm not even in this pocket universe are we keeping Krypto around. We're killing the dog, we're killing the boy, you know.
Everybody's got
Which was a shame.
which I hate so much. I don't know. I'm pretty sure, based on things that Marv Wolfman has said and frustration that he had, because he specifically talked about how the Legion office really got in the way of a lot of his plans for Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I've never heard this explicitly said, but I'm pretty sure that the only reason Superboy Prime exists is because that was supposed to be Legion Superboy with Earth 2 Superman at the end against the Anti-Monitor. And the Legion office blocked it. And so Superboy Prime gets created in a spinoff issue halfway through Crisis. If you look in those issues, Superboy Prime has a very weirdly round belt buckle for Superboy, almost as if it's supposed to have a big L in the middle of it.
Oh.
So I can't really confirm this, but I've always had a sneaking suspicion that what that ending was supposed to be was Golden Age Superman and Silver Age Superboy teaming up to defeat the Anti-Monitor and then going off into their big rest. And that is such a better ending for that version of the character than what Byrne ends up doing. I really hate that the Legion office didn't let them do it if they were going to end up just doing it anyway.
I mean, it's hard to really say that it's the Legion office's fault, considering that they got fucked over by the Superman office following that. So I don't know necessarily. Like, it does kind of make sense. But maybe it could just be them pointing out the rules of time travel are they can't be in the same era as themselves anyway in DC Comics. So it could have been just as simple as oh, well, you can't have Superboy there because Superman's around. Or it could have been more of a full on fight. I'm going to say that we should get back to the comic.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good call.
All right. So we like the dogs. I really I think that there's a lot going for the individual stories. I think that even the Confederacy winning story, which is so fucking awkward, is at least a very interesting story, in terms of doing one-off issues, because like I said, the Supreme the Story of the Year was a 12 issue arc. While the issues have standalone properties to them, it was very clearly part of one continuous story. Whereas in this case, we get all these standalone issues, even though they have serialization components of it, things like setting up Billy Friday's laptop being in the Hell of Mirrors, or the relationship between Diana and Supreme. It still is, each of these individual issues are really solid standalone stories of the character, that you could just pick up and be oh, this is a pretty dope story about a Superman type character. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question for you on that note, because I think you're right. I think the individual issues in this are one of my favorite things about it. It's a good time to plug that I host a podcast that's all about how good an individual issue of a comic can be. And almost all of these are on the list to do for single bound plug. But if you guys could pick one issue from this that all of your friends will read, and one issue of this to delete forever, what are your two picks? Obviously I've already kind of said mine's the Confederacy one.
Yeah, I think from a deletion standpoint, the Confederacy one is the only one that I could delete and not feel like I was losing a huge chunk of the story.
I feel like the Dax episode.
Well, but then The Dax episode might actually be my least favorite issue, but I can't remove it because it's so integral to like what they were like building up towards, even though we don't
I'm
actually
about to say it almost sounds like it works better if you do delete it, because then
because like you don't get the payoff for it.
That's true. Yeah, I probably end up going with your pick, which is that Supreme the Return is the one I would like show a person, like the first issue, or rather the issue that starts with Bill Clinton and whatnot being assaulted by Korga the Space Tyrant.
Yeah, that's definitely mine as well. I think. What about you, Jmike?
I'm still gonna say the puppies episode.
That's a really strong one too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great.
I'm pretty sure that's my favorite one of this entire book.
But I also love like the Saz the Sprite Supreme issue. Like I think that's a really like fun take on a Mr. Mxyzptlk issue. Like, and is so innovative and like so like the fact that they could just like this is like one of those like advancements that they could do because they could do digital art, that they could put the tiny panels in as opposed to like an artist having to go in and fucking draw it, like so that they could do this kind of miniaturization and like mirrorings, so like all the kind of stuff. Like I think it's a very visually appealing issue that works very well as a standalone issue. But yeah, I think that the Supreme the Return #1, the issue where the Hell of Mirrors characters get actually rounded up, is such a strong issue that you get the gist of it pretty easily when you pick up the issue, and it's just very cool.
Yeah.
What's your delete, Jmike?
Well, I said it was a Dax episode.
Oh, okay.
Oh
Yeah. Like I said, that one, I don't think I'd delete that one, but it was definitely the one that drugged the most for me. Of like I said, I was really into it up until about the duck, and then I was like, all right, this is. It felt more like a tour than a story.
I will say that it did have like some really interesting scenes in there, especially the one we didn't talk about where they have Doomsdax restrained in the chair.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But because it doesn't have the payoff, that's the one I can go.
I hate that so many writers like Morrison and Wade and Moore that do these kind of big concept Silver Age Superman stories, they all tend to hate Doomsday. So like if they do anything with him, it's he's in a chair or Jimmy Olsen kind of turns into him. Because I feel like there is so much unmined potential from a writer like that, with the idea that Doomsday is death, is the ever-evolving nature of death, always finding a way to get you personified. And it feels like all the writers who would tap into that feel like they're too good for him, And I felt that way a little bit with Doomsdax. You could have done an amazing issue of this comic with Supreme in a Doomsday. I think Alan Moore would have knocked that out of the park. And instead, he's an Easter egg in a chair.
I think Alan Moore could have knocked it out of the park, but I do worry that would have been more of the grim style that Moore was deliberately trying to avoid when he was doing this book.
True. Yeah, I could definitely see it sliding into that.
Because like he could, like I could picture him doing something like the Kid Miracle Man fight with Doomsday. Yeah, like that degree of devastation, which they aren't too far away from when they did the actual like Doomsday fight in the Superman books, but like really taking it up to like this like crazy degree. So I feel like he could do it really well, but he definitely just doesn't want to here.
Well, yeah, and that's the answer with but like with All Star, a lot of these where these creators go on big tours of Superman, it feels like they skip that huge chapter in the character, and like I said, I would have liked to have seen what he does with it, especially if he kept it light. Right? What does a lighthearted Doomsday look like? It could be done. It could have been what Vor-M was.
So here's a question on the flip side of what we were just talking about. Where does this book kind of falter?
In my opinion, if you have no idea what the heck is going on, it's kind of like hard to jump into at certain points.
Yeah,
I mean, there's some cool concepts here or there, but like if you don't know who the hell Supreme is, you're like, oh, it's this another Superman type thing, and you kind of like brush it off.
Well, I wouldn't give it to anybody who doesn't have a pretty like a journeyman's knowledge of Superman. Right. Yeah. I think you need to know a lot about about the history of Superman to really appreciate a lot of what's going on in here. Kind of like that Jack Kirby issue, like when we talked about it. You've got to have like there's prereqs to this class, to the Supreme class, you know.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I just think the humor is I think it is a lot more dated than a lot of Moore's work gets, and it's because of the humor. Like the
jokes are definitely of their time, and some of them have not aged particularly well. I also think the book falters just because the art is inconsistent, and that is a problem. That is a production problem, not like anyone's. Well, it's Rob Liefeld's fault, yeah. But
I will say though that is something where I think that doesn't bother me as much, because like the first comics I ever read were essentials of the old Marvel stuff, and reading Marvel stuff from the 70s and 80s in the long boxes at the shop my dad worked at. So like I know people right now especially get really bent out of shape when artists change, but to me I think that's just part of the beautiful collaboration of the medium, is like getting to see the shifts. That doesn't bother me as much as it does a lot of folks.
I mean, like, for example, the Judy Jordan issue. I really like that they do different artists for the different chapters, but having Chris Sprouse as one of those chapters is really nice. Yeah. Like, I think that, like, if we had Chris Sprouse throughout a bit more of this issue, or a few more issues of this, it would feel a bit more of a complete work.
Yeah, that's true.
And because you yourself cited that you didn't really like the art of, for example, like the prison escape, or like the prison world of Amalith, like that whole section, like there.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And if it had been Chris Sprouse, it would, that wouldn't have been an issue.
100%. Well, let me say, absolutely. If I could only pick one artist to have done the whole thing, not counting Rick Veitch's flashbacks, right? But right. For the modern stuff, it absolutely would have been Sprouse. I think his stuff in this book is when the Supreme idea works the best, and you can see really what Moore is going for, is when Sprouse is the one drawing it.
Yeah, completely. Just gorgeous work. And it was such a shame that he like only came on at the very end of the story of the year. Because it like for a minute there was like this identity to the book. It was like it's Alan Moore and Chris Sprouse's book, and then that gets like lost almost as quickly as it had been gained.
You know, something I thought of reading it this time. A couple of times Disney has tried to get an Incredibles comic off the ground. Boom had one, and IDW had one for a minute. And looking at it this time, I thought, God, a Chris Sprouse Incredibles comic would look amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Like his style blended with the art style from those movies. I mean, it just, I would buy as many issues as they printed.
Yeah. So like the art is like an area that I think, like I said, it's inconsistent. It's not that I have like huge issues with any of the artists in the book. It's just that it doesn't have like a set style to it. Yeah. Which was unfortunate, because this era of the book was promised as being like, okay, now we've got Sprouse on board as like a permanent artist going forward. Yeah. And that just was like kind of a bummer there. And like we said, it's kind of dated in some areas. Like I know that I have too rosy of an outlook on it. So like, I'm just curious, like where, like, where else does this falter? Jmike.
Where else does it falter?
Yeah.
I think we kind of like hit the basic points that I had for that. Where like if you don't have a deep knowledge of Superman or the Superman archetypes, this would probably be a miss for you. And the art is very, very helter skelter in certain places.
Yeah.
I will say, just for my taste, and we got into this a little bit earlier, but just the version of Superman that Supreme is riffing on, I'm not a fan of the kind of passive, obtuse Silver Age Superman, and Supreme gets into that a couple of times. There's moments in this, and I think it is the character. I don't think it's a mistake, but there's moments in this where you just want to shake him and be like, hey man, if you were like proactive an ounce, like you're building robots with realistic dog blood, but you didn't think to try to like check up on this prison, or right. Stuff like that. Like if you were taking this as seriously as you were taking gaslighting your coworkers, maybe a lot of this crap wouldn't have happened. And I don't think you have that as much with, they do a better job with modern Superman of finding ways for the hijinks to ensue that don't make him look as bad as Supreme does at times in this.
Yeah, I mean that's the pastiche nature of this, where like they are kind of riffing on that Silver Age Superman sometimes for humor.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's very like the panel where they're kissing over Judy Jordan's dead body. I think it's very intentional. I think Moore's trying to say something about that, but I think that is some of Moore's cynicism kind of leaking back in a way that doesn't really happen with Tom Strong. Like Tom Strong's kind of emotionally detached, but he is outgoing, you know. Like he doesn't let somebody doesn't walk by Tom Strong sad and Tom Strong go, fuck was her problem, like Supreme does, you know.
Yeah.
Like he at least tries to go and figure out why his wife is upset or his daughter is having a hard time or whatever. And I just for personal taste, I just prefer that in a character. And it probably would have escalated how much I like Supreme if he had a little bit more of that All-Star Superman kind of thread through him.
Yeah, the passivity that you're talking about, I was thinking about this with the Confederacy issue. Like Supreme actually doesn't do anything in the issue. Like he just shows up to the League of Infinity and like is there while they respond to it. Like he's present. Yeah. Like that's all you can say for him in that issue. And it's just him like taking in as a passive observer the events of that issue.
I will say too, and this is definitely me looking at this through a modern lens. It's not fair to say wild that he finds that costume in his closet and then puts it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be that he's just like tired and not really looking. But
I would fight crime in Fruit of the Looms before I flew out the window. Although I do agree with you from purely an aesthetic and not at all political or historical context, it does look kind of dope with the stars and bars on
exactly.
them. Like,
it's so annoying. It's so annoying because it's fucking abhorrent. Hey, like just awful shit.
A little nugget of truth that I'm not supposed to snitch about from the South. That's not the Confederacy's real flag.
Also
right.
True.
Like, but there's a reason that's the one that they use, because everybody who sees it goes, that's pretty dope. That looks good. Pretty cool. That's way better than the like minimalist American flag we were actually using down here. Like that's and I look at the swastika's history with pulp heroes before the Nazis, right? Like the Phantom's got it on his hand. In India, that's still a very common, that is the trouble with humans' love of iconography, is most of the time if somebody decides to abscond with a symbol, it's because it's important or as aesthetically pleasing or whatever. So we've got to then contend with like, oh man, I still really like, I don't know, the wizarding world of Harry Potter, but now it sucks, and where do we weigh that, and that is one of the things I think that keeps that flag around. Is there's a lot of people who wear it for very nefarious, evil reasons, but there are a lot of people down here who just do not put that much thought into it, who just looked at it and went, that's cool,
that's pretty
that
cool.
Looks great. I'm a put it on every inch of this pickup truck, like,
right.
And that's something that I think the humans aren't ready to deal with. That there are some people who are using wicked symbols just because they look cool, and unfortunately this time it does. I'm not wearing one. Yeah. I'm not going to fly around.
Nope.
I'm not going to go talk to my black robot butler or any of the other stuff Supreme decides to do after he finds it in his closet. But it definitely solves, like I was, again, like I said, there's some kind of weird monkey's paw thing with this going on here for me, where I look at Supreme's costume and I go, oh man, I wish there was a symbol there. Oh, no. Not
that one.
Yeah. It's like one worse symbol you could have picked.
Yeah. All right. So final thoughts on Supreme the Return before we call it for this very long episode. Jmike.
Go read the dog episodes. They're awesome. So cool. Radar gets his time to shine.
Yes.
Hooray.
Logan, how about you?
I just, if you're not a huge Superman fan, I would maybe shore that up before you read this. But if you are a huge Superman fan and you haven't read this, do yourself a favor. And again, I've never read Story of the Year. Like, I have a lot of nostalgia for this comic, but it's just this trade, right? That's the only one I've ever had. I think that you could jump into this one having not read Story of the Year if you happen to find it first and still have a good time.
I think so. Like I said, I think that there's a lot of like standalone issues here. Like you said, you need to know more about Superman necessarily than you do need to know about Supreme. Mm-hmm. Like, as long as you know that he's a Superman pastiche, you're pretty good to go. And yeah, I think it's a really worthwhile book. Like, it's, like I said, I have so much nostalgia, and I'm not trying to like thrust my nostalgia on everyone. Well, kind of, and that is what this podcast is. Like,
no, brother, but, you're talking to a Damage fan. I'm not gonna judge you for that. Right?
Oh, God. But anyway, so yes, so I think it is a really fun story with like really fun individual issues that were very inventive at the time and maybe haven't aged like 100% as well. But in general, it's still coming from like a place of creativity and of inspiration that I find really rewarding when I look at this.
I mean, I like it more than this is probably my I'll end on a hot take. I like this more than I like Invincible. I like it way more, and I like Invincible quite a bit. I like it way more than I like The Boys. I don't like The Boys at all. Like, if you're looking for if your criteria is Superman but not Superman, this is about as good as it gets. This or Mr. Majestic's pretty good, but I don't, Miracle Man in a very bleak way, but boy, go into that with your seatbelt on. But this is a great option for that.
For real. So I think we've said what we need to say about Supreme the Return. We've said it. We've said 3 hours of what we need to say about Supreme the Return. So Logan, where can people find you and follow you? Thank you for coming on.
You can find me and my beautiful wife, Amy, on the Single Bound podcast. Her beauty will do nothing for you, though, because we're currently only in an audio format. Well spoken, though. We review single issues of comics that stand on their own, what we think is great about them. You can find us at singleboundpodcast@gmail.com if you want to suggest an issue. We've currently only ever gotten one piece of fan mail. Shout out to Lorenzo, who I'm sure listens to this show as well.
Yes,
and
he does.
We read his comic on the air. If you are constantly a fan of these podcasts and you send in your submissions and they never read them, my brother, this is your moment. Do it now. We will take your comic. You will get through the door. You are walking into an empty bar at this point, and we would love to have you.
Yes, everyone should check out Single Bound. It's a really fun concept for a show, and I'll be on not too long from now.
You're going to be on pretty soon doing the Batman and Captain America crossover.
Yeah, also by John Byrne. If we want to talk about noted dog hater.
Oh, the poor dogs. Ace, run!
But yeah, so everyone should check that out. Did you give your socials?
I think so. Yeah, Singlebound Podcast at Gmail and Singlebound Pod on Instagram.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So everyone should check all that out. And just because you're awesome, and Singlebound is a really fun concept. So definitely want to shout out that. Jmike, where can people find you and follow you?
You can find me over on the Blue Sky, j5.bluesky.social. Also, kind of sort of on the Discord server as well. Mostly kind of around. Always lurking.
Yes, the Discord is a great place to find us. You can find a link to our Discord server in our show notes and on the main page for certainpov.com. Just come and chat. We have really good conversations there. It's a great time. So I would highly recommend people do that. If you don't want to find me on the Discord server because you're not into Discord, which I can understand. Like, we all have like things that we just don't want to touch. You can find me on most socials at Case Aiken. These days, I'm mostly directing people to the Blue Sky. You can also find me on Instagram at Quetzalcoatl5 because I was pretentious in high school, and that is QUETZALCOATL5. Yay! That's There's that. We should shout out we should shout out a show on our network, and I'm going to shout out the new show that we're launching, which is kind of like Single Bound, but it's not, because it's about trade paperbacks, and that is Trade School. That is a new program that I am spearheading, which is like Side Quest from Fun and Games, if you're familiar with that one, where a guest host comes on and talks for about 5 to 15 minutes about a trade paperback that they really loved. Give some thoughts about that. We would really love submissions. By the time this episode drops, the show will have launched, and I've got 3 months worth of back catalog already, which is great. But I would love to have more submissions from people, because it's going to be a weekly show about comic books and really celebrating comic books and why they're cool. So check out Trade School. Like that, it's on its own feed. It's on the same YouTube feed here if you are watching this on YouTube, but if you are listening to this as a podcast, it's got its own feed. So look up Trade School, and I'm really excited about that. So that's the thing I'm going to plug. But then we also have some people that we should thank, because we have a Patreon going now, and that is going really strong and really well. And I really want to thank the people who joined the Patreon at the executive producer level. And that includes Micah McCaw, Carter Hallett, Sean Muir, Lee Gregor, Memento Young, Logan Crowley. Hey.
That sounds like a tool.
Joe Mastropiero, Casey and Nancy Aiken, Adam Samter, and Keith Lettinen. So we just have to say thank you so much, everyone who has contributed to the Patreon. It's so wonderful. Even if you just sign up as a free member, we're still doing bonus content, such as essays that I write on the weekly basis, both a nerdy essay and also a D&D focused essay that I've been doing every week. And that's been a lot of fun, just to have a place to, get my thoughts out there upon the world.
Let me say, as a customer, by the way, I love those essays.
Oh, thank you very much.
The D&D ones are very dangerous for me, because I do not have the bandwidth in my life right now to get back into D&D. But every time one of those crosses the thing, I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good rogue idea. That's a pretty cool fighter. Paladin. I could do a paladin. Like.
Well, thank you for saying that. I've been having a lot of fun writing these articles, and so I really, really would encourage people to check out our Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com/certainpovmedia, and yeah, just check us out. We've been going strong, and would love to see you there. But otherwise, just find me on the Discord, find me wherever. And until next time, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Jmike Folson and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Sophia Ricciardi. Our logo is by Chris Batista, and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our theme is by Geoff Moonen.
We love digging into epic comic book runs, but what about the art of the single issue? Single Bound is a new podcast series hosted by married couple Amy and Logan, as they review single issues of comics. And if the title also makes you think of Superman, you're not alone, as the Man of Steel is Logan's favorite character and a regular topic of discussion on Single Bound. Listen and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and follow the show on Instagram at Single Bound Podcast.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.